Let's kick this back in.
Yeah. Let's get to some Matangoing.
All right. So
it takes 2 to Matango, Jerry.
Actually, here it takes 3.
Nice. That should be the promo for the show right there.
You're gonna be just fine.
I just talk. I just talk.
Listen to them, children of the night.
Sic transit gloria.
Thrill me.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Kill the Cast. My name is Jerry, and on this very special episode, I am not joined by my 2 normal co-hosts. I have murdered them and replaced them with 2 other co-hosts for this very special episode. Joining me all the way from Cinema Psyops is the sometimes amazing, always at least mediocre, Cort Psyops.
I'm at least mediocre? That's a thing that I've been striving for my whole life. Hooray!
Yeah, at minimum, you're at least mediocre. Minimum.
Well, at least I'm never terrible.
Yeah, exactly. And also joining us is the founding member of the network we are on, Legion Podcast, also host of Pick 6 Movies, my personal favorite, Hero Ghost Show, and the, I guess now, dead and retired, Devour the Podcast. It is the great and wonderful and powerful Oz. I meant Bo. Great and powerful Bo.
Hey, man. Yeah. Now I feel like I am dead and retired after that introduction.
That's my goal.
All right. Well, sooner rather than later, probably. Let's be honest. Thanks. And it is fun to be here. This is my first visit. Even though it's weird because I feel like I've done the show because like we've had lunch and shit. So
we did. We've actually met in person. Yeah. We had lunch. We stared in each other's eyes, and then you also had me come on Hero Ghost Show.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Hashtag jealous.
Hashtag jealous for Hero Ghost Show because you're on there a lot.
Well,
lunch.
Hashtag jealous that you guys are in the same state and that you can meet for lunch because I would love to have lunch with both of you.
Actually, I plan on later in the summer once I get a couple of things taken care of around the house. Just an open invite of like, hey, if anyone wants to come for a couple of days, even we'll do a cookout. And I know that Ricky and you are nearby, as well as Danny, of course. And a couple of other people are close enough. We might be able to get X to drive in. And but I'll give it some advance. So if somebody wants to even, make a trip.
That would be a journey worth making for me. I would love to do that.
Yeah, stay for a couple of days, eat, and we'll have a nice, 24 to 48 hour long party filled with probably a lot of sleeping because we're all old.
Yeah. Well, I've got the room and we've got the big projector downstairs, so we could do some movie watching and some barbecuing and that kind of thing. I'm sorry, I totally have derailed this entire show. I apologize for.
And I'm kind of hungry now.
We have to grill some mushrooms for this, definitely. Mushrooms.
I'm gonna pass on that, but I will take the mushroom flavored Kool-Aid. All right.
Oh, but yeah, so this is kind of weirdly a Hero Go Show reunion, but we've never had quite this mix before, and we're talking about a Japanese horror film, so this really is just perfect.
There needs to be a Hero Go Show with all 3 of us. We could blow people's minds.
We'll come up with an excuse for one. I've been real lazy about that because I'm kind of developing another show, and that's where all my attention has been. But more about that soon.
All right. Well, you got the cock tease here first. So why have I brought these gentlemen together? Well, that's because we are going to do one of my all-time favorite movies, and that is Ishiro Honda's Matango from 1963. Fun fact, I tried to do this movie on Kill the Cast a few years ago by showing it to Kenneth, who is normally on the show, and my buddy Alex from the Skeleton Crew and Married with Children, because he had never seen it. And halfway through the review, we just kind of stopped because it wasn't working. It just wasn't the type of movie for them. And we just ended up interviewing Alex and putting that out. So I've been wanting to do it, and of course I could have done it on Underwater Kaiju from Outer Space, and we will do it on that at some point. but I kind of wanted to just do a special Kill the Cast episode because I had tried to do the movie before and it didn't work. So I reached out and recruited two of the best podcasters I could find. They didn't answer their phone. So instead, I went to Legion and got Bo and Cort to join me on this. Now, Bo, I know, had seen Matango and loves Matango. Cort had never seen Matango, so he's going to be our fresh eyes in this little adventure. So we'll start off with first asking, Bo, what is your history with Matango?
It's a sordid history, Jerry. Let's be real. No, this is one of those that, like, when I got back in the day, I had seen Attack of the Mushroom People because it was one of the movies what would come on at like 2:00 on a Saturday afternoon, and Chubbs was inside hiding from the sun watching Japanese horror movies on television. So I think that's where I originally saw it. And then it was later in college, you know, in the experimental phase of your life. And Matango, I don't even know if it was a legit copy. I know that the student union showed it. And so I went to see it there. And it was like the Japanese Matango. And it was cool. And like after that, after seeing the Japanese one in particular, I thought, like, this is a really deeply weird fucking movie. And only as time has gone on and I have watched a lot more of Ishiro Honda stuff do I appreciate kind of how different a movie this is from anything else he did.
It's a much different movie than from many other movies. There's not many movies I can think of that are quite like Matango, as it takes the paranoia that you have from, say, John Carpenter's The Thing, puts it on a setting like Gilligan's Island, but is uniquely Japanese in its criticism, which I'll get into later. And as for me, Matango is one of those movies that, as a fan of Godzilla movies, it was one of the ones you heard of, like Atragon or Dogura, that you could never really find until someone finally shows up with a bootleg, and that they got at some convention that they paid $50 for this VHS transfer that looks shitty, and we watched it, and I loved it. And I, years later, was able to find a slightly better version of the Japanese one, and then a few years later after that, it finally came out on DVD, and I rented it from Netflix and watched that. And then, of course, as soon as I could find it, I actually bought the movie. So I do have the DVD, which is hard as hell to find, which is unfortunate. And I actually have to say, though I've seen the Japanese version a few times, I actually tend to watch the English dub because I like the character voices for the English dub. And there's only one major difference between the original Japanese version and the American version, so it's not a huge deal. Everything else is pretty much the same, just worded slightly different. Yeah. So it's fine. Now, Cort, you had never really seen this movie, but you did tell us an interesting story about where you kind of saw a clip. So tell us about your history with Matango.
Okay, now I had known about Matango because of being a Ishiro Honda film and also being Toho. And it's one of the ones exactly like you described it, where you hear about it, you know it's out there, and you can't find it for fuck all, but you see pictures of various things or whatever in books that you might read, or like a famous monsters. And there was a local horror host out here, and I was actually at a party, and the local horror host out here was playing it. It was on TV, and I wanted to watch that. And I was forced to shut it off and interact with people rather than watch a horror host, which is, as anyone who knows me would know, that it's like the worst thing you could ever ask of me.
It's worse than, say, like, I need you to kill this baby deer.
I stand by what I said.
All right.
So, in other words, as a child, you had a VHS tape copy of a Godzilla movie that had the short Godzilla vs. Bambi in the beginning of it, and you were like, not as bad as not being able to watch Matango.
Sort of, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've slaughtered animals for food before. I tried not to make them suffer. So, I mean, I worked on a farm as a kid, you know, so that's not a big deal.
That might be the manliest thing said on this show.
Yeah, ain't nothing like that coming out of me.
Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Kenneth's pretty manly. He talks about guns and necrophilia, but I don't think any of us has slaughtered animals for a living as a child.
Now, I had to talk to my therapist about that time I accidentally killed a bird with a BB gun.
Yeah.
True story.
And I just have to cry every time I think about Marley and Me, so I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. I'm an easy touch with a movie about a dog. That'll get me every time.
And it's just easy to touch me.
Yeah.
I'm an animal lover, don't get me wrong, but meat is meat and a man's got to eat. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, no, I'm not.
Oh, I'm with you. Okay.
Anyway, enough about that. Back to Matango. But it is kind of cool. Like it for a long time, it was this kind of holy grail. It's nice to live in an age where, yes, the movie is not right around the corner, but you can get your hands on a copy of it, even if you got to eBay it, and it's maybe not quite on the up and up and all that shit. But you can get your hands.
The American edit of it, or the English language edit of it, is under the title Attack of the Mushroom People right now on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
I actually need to watch that. I've never watched that version of it. I only ever saw the Japanese original version. And now I don't know if the one that's on my Tokyo Shock DVD, who does the dub for that. I really should have looked into it. But I do know that Japan did make a international dub for the movie, but I do not think that's what they used for Attack of the Mushroom People, if it is a highly edited version.
But you can at least see some version of it very easily if you have Amazon Prime right now. You can just go onto the video app and watch it. Or
you know what? Since you can't buy it in a way that gives Toho money, message me and I'll get you the movie. If you cannot get the people who made the movie money, then I see no reason why you should give it to some guy named Ralph. So hit me up.
The third-party seller who's going to charge you $75 for a DVD that's been out of print for a really long time that they've watched 100 times and just got sick of.
Yeah, and I've got both versions that are on the Tokyo Shock DVD, the dub and sub. So whichever one you want, I got you. So that's interesting. So yeah, this is going to be Cort's first time. So as we go through this movie, we will kind of get to see two people who love this movie, have loved it for a long time, and someone that's going to be their first time. He's losing his virginity to a giant mushroom. I don't know how to follow that sentence.
Giant mushroom-headed thing. Let's face it, that's what's happening here.
Well, I'm kind of turned on. So, okay. So, now, this movie, one problem this movie has is learning everyone's name. I know it took me a few watches to do it, and in fact, I usually just call them code names. I don't know if that was a problem for you, Cort, but I'm terrible with Japanese names. And at some point, I will mispronounce the name, and Bo will most likely correct me.
I will enjoy it when I do.
Yes.
I give characters code names or nicknames all the time when I watch movies because I don't pay attention to the names of the characters. It takes a while before I actually do. It's just something that I do. Like, I recognize... I'm terrible with names anyway. In real life, I have coworkers I've probably known for like 5 years, and I just know them by their face and not their name.
That's fine. That's how I know everyone on podcasting. But
do
it's
you
more
give
the
them
voice.
Do you give them the, hey, Chief, how are you?
Hey, buddy, how's it going? Everybody's buddy to me. It works.
Hey, Captain.
What's up, boss? All right. Okay, so here is the cheat codes that I use, that Wikipedia uses, that IMDb uses, which is Murai is professor. He is a conscientious psychology professor. I can't go into the second part of that sentence that I wrote because it describes too much. Then you've got Mommy, which is the singer, or Mimi, depending on which version you're going with. It's spelled Mommy, but it's kind of said Mimi. She is a carefree singer and temptress. And she's also played by Kumi Mizono, and I love her.
Yeah, she pops up in a couple of Ishiro Honda films, if I'm not mistaken.
She does, and I love it every time. In fact, Professor Murai is actually played by Akira Kubo, who also pops up in a lot of Honda films, along with the next guy, Kenji Sahara, who plays our sailor, Koyama, who was a crude, low-class ruffian.
And smokes a pipe, a badass pipe.
I identified with him.
No, not the skipper.
Oh,
the
right,
sailor.
right. Okay,
we have to make that very clear. There is a skipper and a sailor. Koyama, the sailor, he's the crude, low-class ruffian guy who is literally just the hired hand. Then we have our writer, Yoshida, who is a very pretentious mystery novelist.
Also identified with him.
I wonder why. We have the owner of this yacht, which is Kasai, who is a greedy capitalist. And then we have Bo's favorite, the skipper, Sakuda, who is an authority that is to be taken seriously. Okay? He has a pipe.
Yeah.
Take him serious,
oh, man.
guys.
I love it.
Yeah, I've got no complaints about the pipe. It's awesome.
I wish I could pull that look off. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, and then our literal non-character, you have the student Akiko, who is shy and afraid and is kind of Professor Murai's girlfriend.
Yeah, kind of. She's just the girl that they were like, well, we felt bad for her, so we brought her along, and now that she's here, she's kind of a drag.
Like, well, you could tell Murai's like, I'm not allowed to date her because she's a student and I'm a professor, but international waters, right, guys?
And the zip code rule is in full effect on this boat.
Exactly. So this movie was shot between, if you want to talk Godzilla, it was between Godzilla versus King Kong and Godzilla versus Mothra. But it is actually between Gorath and Atragon, who sandwich in this trilogy that Honda did between his two Godzilla movies of Gorath, Matango, and Atragon. Unfortunately, Matango, which is the best of those three movies, is unfortunately the one that did the worst at the box office in Japan, surprisingly enough. But that's okay. I still like it.
The Thing bombed too. You know? It's like the good shit is not appreciated in its day all the time.
It really isn't. And honestly, to this day, I still don't think Matango gets the appreciation it does. But I'm hoping by the end of this review, which will have tons of spoilers in it, but it's a movie even with spoilers, you're still going to enjoy the hell out of the movie. So whether you've seen it or not, you should go see it before you watch this or listen to this. But we're about to get into the story, and it starts with a great dark opening with Mirai telling you all that his friends are alive and he is dead. So why didn't they come back? We fade away into Gilligan's Island, where we get some credits on top of boat sails. Here we meet our cast. Yoshida is writing, Mimi is singing, Kasai, who owns the boat, makes fun of Kikyo for being seasick, and they really start off showing you each character right away. As Mimi starts singing to get attention, and the shy Kiko runs away, you have the skipper and the sailor talking about whose woman that, who's married to Mimi. What kind of lady is she?
Yeah, and they're pretty quick to be like, well, she's not the marrying kind, really. Like, and someone finally asks, like, oh, so she's a mistress? And, like, it's like, like, nobody commits to it, but it's like, yeah, kind of. Just be cool.
How little commitment do you have that you can't even commit to being a mistress?
Hey, look, she's a free spirit, man. She's singing songs. She's playing a fucking ukulele. She's got shit going on.
Yeah. So, either way, we find out that a storm is coming. And even though the skipper Sakudo tells Koyama that, hey, we got to go warn them. And they're even talking about how different they are from the others in the high class. Sakuda basically tells Kasai that storm's coming and we need to get out of here. But instead of taking that advice, Kasai's like, I spent tons of money on this boat, therefore it can survive a storm. Which is not good logic. I can spend a lot of money on a cheeseburger. That does not mean it's going to survive a kid running up and hitting me in the balls.
Or the shameful process of digestion, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Unless it's from McDonald's, then it can't be digested.
Yeah, that's true.
I would beg to differ. Because I survive on McDonald's and laxatives, and I have beaten McDonald's many of times.
Sure. Well, yeah.
Okay, so I'm lying.
It's the
Get
second
over it.
part of that makes the first part okay.
Yeah. So Kasai and everyone else votes to keep sailing because, hey, this boat costs 40 million yen. There's no way it's going to crash. So we go back.
It's also named Titanic 2, by the way.
Yeah.
Yes, unfortunately.
And well, and Richie Rich just like spends his time like as the storm is brewing, and they're like, we should probably go back. And he's like, you know what? Here's what I do. I don't know shit. I just hire people who know shit. And that's my genius, is just being able to like coast on the shoulders of others. And then is starting to make the big calls like, oh yeah, no, the storm's fine. Let's just sail right into it. In fact, if you see a lot of lightning, go towards that. I bet that's going to be something to see.
Yeah, it's like he thinks he's really talented because his dad gave him a small loan of $1 million, and he's been able to coast on that into a very successful life, and he thinks that means he started with his own talent. It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
That sounds awfully familiar.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I feel like there's someone that brags constantly about that.
Nope, I created that all on my own.
Yeah. Nothing coming to mind.
Yeah.
So Yoshida talks to Mirai and talks that he's a psychology professor and tells Mirai, if you threaten a woman and then become sympathetic for her, she falls in love with you. This is
how I got my wife.
Really?
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, it's
you
like
just
the
walk over to her,
dentist
hey,
system.
dame.
Yeah, it is. It's just as bad as the dentist system from It's Always Sunny.
Yeah, it's just like, look, you got to neg her a little bit, and then you swoop in and pick her up, and everything's cool.
Yeah, the whole call her fat, and then she's more
Buy her a
vulnerable for you to
cheeseburger.
get in there. Yeah,
Take
call
her
her
to
fat, get her a
McDonald's.
beer, it'll be all right. This is something that
Hey,
in the
fatty,
1960s.
you want a double quarter pounder?
I'll even throw in some chicken nuggets. This is something that in the 1960s I could definitely see a novelist thinking, because it's such a not hopeless romantic idea, but just retarded romantic idea that obviously would not fly today anyway, unless your name is Max and you're one of the cool bros.
Yeah, well, let's be honest. The politics of this movie is not much more sophisticated than an episode of Dragnet. I mean,
Fair enough.
And it comes from about the same place.
Yeah, all our fans of Murder, She Wrote will get that reference.
Yeah. Ask your grandpa about the show Dragnet. But basically, like this movie's real square jawed about like drugs are bad. You know, like let's not mistake how Republican ultimately Matango is.
This, after we go through the review, we'll get into the more philosophy and everything. But this is the second time Ishiro Honda has done a movie where he talks about drugs.
Yeah.
So this was not new for him.
Well, this was the rebel period of Japan as well. Like, you know, the Beatles were hitting about this time, and that the Japan was totally aware of that, and the youth culture was changing.
Yeah.
And so drug use was more prevalent and more talked about, and that kind of thing, kind of popularized just like it was in the West. And so Ishiro Honda was one of those old guard that was like, drugs are bad, okay?
Yeah, in fact, if you watch the original Japanese version of Godzilla versus King Kong, that movie has a very, very big message to it that is very political for Honda. So Honda has never shied away from being political, even when it's about a Godzilla fighting a giant monkey who has an addiction to berry juice. Please go listen to the Hero Go show on Godzilla vs. King Kong, because you will laugh your ass off at Elvis King Kong.
King Kong, gotta score that juice, man.
My God, I had to shout that out. That fucking episode was just, amazing.
That's when Bo and I knew we had something special.
Yeah. You got a barrel of berries over there, man?
Come on, goddammit, you know I need that stuff.
Big G, please.
Yeah, so Honda was very much into making his political messages regardless of what the story of the film is supposed to be. So during the storm, you have all the guys up top trying to fix everything, and the girls are are down there, and then at the bottom they're sitting at a table with their heads down on it like children. Almost like everyone is a child in the eyes of nature. You are small and it can slap you. And they do a great job here of showing each of the character. The owner, Kasai, ends up going and hiding down with the women. And then when the engine goes out and the skipper runs down there, he blames the skipper for the engine not working, even though he's the one that blew off the warnings. It's his own recklessness and cockiness that put him in here. Almost like there was there was like a form of social media that he could just say whatever he wanted with, regardless of anyone fact checking it. It's weird.
Are you sure there's not someone specific
Not
you're talking
a single person. It's just all this stuff I created as I was writing my notes. It just kind of came to me. I couldn't think of a single person.
Okay, it really feels like there's someone, and I know that's good writing because it makes me feel like someone that I can think of.
Yeah,
so
sure, it's that's art.
Yeah, I have a hidden talent. But you know what also has a hidden talent? Rich people, because they buy boats that can survive a storm.
In fairness, the boat did survive the storm. It just fucked it up real bad, and that's what he wasn't accounting for.
Yeah, to be fair, it counts as surviving the storm as long as it doesn't sink. It's still doing one part of its job, technically, so therefore it's a success.
I'm going to take the win on this.
Yes, yeah. Exactly.
We're just calling it a W and be done with it.
Yeah. So the boat is just jacked up and they now go to adrift to the south. And we have this conversation between our skipper and our owner. And it kind of, this is where the skipper tells the owner, you know what, you just had to play skipper. You're so rich and powerful. You had to be control in front of everybody. And look where it got us. This is where the movie, okay. This scene is telling you how humans react under pressure and stressful events. When the storm was just coming, it was just a thought. The rich guy was still good. As soon as shit hits the fan, he blames someone. And then as soon as everything calms down and he sees the wreckage, he has to be like, so you can fix this, right? Like, you're the skipper, aren't you? Even though I was just saying I was. You are, right? Like, this movie throughout is going to have have it shown how your true character is going to show when tragedy strikes.
Yeah, and it's Romero-esque in that way that, yeah, like people get down to who they really are. Exactly.
It's something that this movie, as some movies are just character driven. Rob Zombie's Devil's Reject is a character driven movie. The movie is just completely about these characters and learning about these characters and how they react for good or for bad. And it takes a huge lesson from Matango in this. Matango shines for its characters. And it also shines at foreshadowing, as we have the writer Yoshida see a ship in the fog and he hears its horn and the boat kind of just doesn't stop and runs over the boat. But it turns out he was just dreaming. And
I thought that was a ghost ship that just was definitely foreshadowing, like they were seeing some kind of weird hallucination. I really dug that.
But
yeah, that's cool.
It's the fact that the character it happens to first is Yoshida, who later on will be the first one to succumb to the island.
Yeah, because he's all kooky in the head.
Yes.
I'll tell you, here's the thing I really dig about this scene is it's got a little Carpenter in here too, because there's this whole bit where the singer is complaining about how, like, hey, we're running out of water. This fog's been around forever and we can't get out of it. Like, where are we going? What's going on? We can't see anything around us. It's really like, this is the point where it's like Matango is kind of a different kind of movie than the typical Honda fare. It's like, there's not really going to be the big monsters in this. This is actually going to be more sophisticated in its story.
Yeah.
I think you nailed it when you said that it's very Romero-esque. This especially the times of crisis and how everybody on the ship starts turning on each other when they're in that survival mode. It is exactly how the people respond in Night of the Living Dead, and I think it nails it perfectly that way.
Yeah, it just did it, 5 years before.
Well, yeah, but it's the closest frame of reference that I have to kind of say, just like when you compared it to The Thing.
Yes.
Yeah, and we'll get to that stuff, which is great.
Yeah, and I also like the foreshadowing that once again we get when Mimi laughs as the tension between Sakuda, the skipper, and the owner Kasai have their conversation, and the sailor Koyama walks in and talks about how women are taboo on ships, not because the gods are jealous of them, but because men lose their minds for them. Another piece of foreshadowing we have as Mimi kind of insert herself in the middle of a tension-based conversation and how it's driving these men crazy, and Koyama is the one to call it as it is. In a kind of misogynistic way, but that's kind of who he is.
Right. And also, she loves her some drama.
Oh, yeah, she's all about it. She literally will do anything for attention. She will tell you she is the best singer. No singer is as good as her. Sells out clubs. 60-person club, packs it out with 200 people every single time. Best singer.
I like this character just because she's not like the passive character like Akiko is in this film. Like she seems like, for lack of a better term, kind of a broad of like, hey, this is a real self-assured kind of woman in this time among men. And is a little bit more brazen and certainly scandalous in a way that Akiko is not. But Akiko also is kind of a non-entity for most of the movie.
To be fair...
I was going to say, she's exactly the kind of woman that would annoy the living hell out of that captain and would make him say the thing that he just said.
No, not the captain. The sailor.
The author. The sailor, sorry.
Sailor. See, that's why you got to use all the proper nicknames. That's why I didn't go with captain and I went with skipper. Because I can think of skipper and sailor. And I'm like, yep, anyone that calls himself skipper, confidence out the ass. Mm-hmm. No one can go around and call themselves. Anyone can be like, oh yeah, I'm a captain. Do you have the balls to call yourself a skipper? Then put the pipe down, because you're not allowed to have it. Contrasting all the characters against each other, Kiko and Mimi are such opposites. Kiko is kind of the traditional conservative Japanese woman that was prominent up until this time, where Mimi is now the self-sustained, free of heart, almost Americanized new woman from the new century. She's not a wife, she's not a mistress, she's her own person. She will do whatever she wants to do, and she will get her own by however she has to do it. Give her a gun and she's American.
Yeah.
So, with that, they now finally find an island. They land on this island. It looks beautiful. One of my favorite shots is right after our sailor Koyama tries a berry, and is like, no, and it makes the sour face, throws it. They keep marching on. The camera slowly paces upwards through the trees as they march forward, and it's just a nice shot that moves on two fronts, and it's just beautiful. The photography, the director of photography, how this movie is shot is just wonderful. It uses things like this to build interest in just standard movement. They're just moving forward, but while they're moving forward, you're still being kind of taken away from them, because you yourself watching the movie are civilized in a civilized place. You cannot be on the ground with them.
All right, I like that. And also, it does a really nice job of kind of showing like the depth and breadth of the jungle as well. Of like, yeah, they're in the wilds. There's no civilization to be had here. Yeah,
in fact, in their next scene, they find that civilization, And they find it in the form of ship that is absolutely wrecked, has been shipwrecked for like a year. But I also love the look of the scene of the ship, and it's all this fog, and it's them running towards this ship. And for this movie, Eiji Tsuburaya had convinced Toho to get him a new optical printer. What was the name of it? Oxberry?
I don't remember. I read about this as well. I know that it was kind of on loan from the U.S., I think.
Well, they ended up buying it.
But they were able to do these composite shots in ways they never been able to before, where it was like 5 layers of composite shots, and it made it way more economical to do those shots, as well as just the better effects.
Yeah, and I'm really actually slightly confused on it because I read that it can do 4, but in an interview with one of the guys who was one of the big people who did special effects on this movie, because Eiji Tsuburaya worked on this movie, but this was at the time when he was building his studio, Tsuburaya Productions. So at this time, it was more they hired Eiji, but he was kind of like letting his team do it because technically they were being hired as a outside team instead of working directly for Toho. And the guy who did it, he said it could do up to 6 shots in once, but he actually it was really cool because he broke down that how they were doing everything before was a back projection, and this was a front projection, which made everything look more cleaner. And with the Oxberry, they could do multiple different pictures going at once. You see it when you see any shot of them on the beach where you can see the coastline, and you see this weird greenish purplish fog over everything. It's very cool.
Yeah, this movie I think looks fantastic. Like all the Technicolor vividness of it, and the kind of saturation of it all. I just think it's gorgeous.
Yeah, I'm literally.
I actually thought it was. I thought it was like a decade later than what it was. Like I was shocked that it came out in like '63 after I finished it.
Yeah. It looks so good.
I am really debating on importing the Toho Japanese Blu-ray and ripping it and putting a subtitles SRT file on it and trying for as long as I can to get it to line up because, oh my God, I want to see this movie in Blu-ray.
Yeah, that ain't the worst idea I ever heard. And even just letting it roll without the subtitles, like, we've seen it enough times now that's like, yeah. I know what they're saying. I know what's going on. Let's just see this thing as good as it can look. I bet it does look. If the restoration was right on this thing, holy cow, I bet it looks great.
From what I've heard, Toho does a really good job with the restoration, so probably.
Ugh. Sounds good.
So the men decide to go into the ship, and the women are going to wait. And once again, we have one of the men waiting with the women. This time it is our writer Yoshida, because he's like, they would have eaten all their food before they died. There's no point in this. It's like as soon as Yoshida lands on the island, he becomes the epitome of apathy.
Yeah.
Also, I've learned that I say that word wrong, and it's not epitome, but I don't care. Yeah, apparently it's epitome, but I've always said epitome, and now I can't, without actively thinking about it, I can't change it.
Yeah.
So I just admit that I can't say it after I say it.
Yeah.
Because if you do something wrong and you admit you did something wrong, you can continue to do that wrong thing. I've learned this.
Yeah, it's the path to forgiveness.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, I feel like you guys are talking about a very specific person.
No. I was talking about the art design of this movie. The inside of this ship is amazing. I actually found out the ship, the set, was the way it was built. It was built tilted, so that the actors would always be slightly off balance when they were on the ship set, which is really cool. One of the actors said he used to get sick because of it, but you gotta get sick for your art.
Sure. Yeah. Christian Bale does that all the time.
Yeah. He's sick with the sound guy, and we're sick with fungus.
Mm-hmm.
Much like this podcast.
It looks, and it has a real gothic kind of look to it all, which I really dig. It feels very different, even though there's plants everywhere and shit. It feels very different somehow, especially as they're going through all the cabinets and their beakers and shit.
The turtle, the no-eyed turtle.
Well, and this is as close as the movie ever comes to giving you a reason why, which is, hey, it looks like they were doing experiments here, and it probably had something to do with radiation, because the mutation in the turtle is one like you would see in and then they open up a crate and there's a giant ass mushroom in there most prominently, and they're like, hey, it looks like some kind of mutant mushrooms here. What the fuck?
Yeah, and the ship has a Geiger counter. The manifesto for the ship has no nationality. There's stuff that's from capitalist countries, communist countries, Japanese, or well, they say communist and free world in Japanese, which is interesting. So, and the girls finally decide that they're going to get on the boat too, and they notice that all the mirrors have been taken off. Then they all find the captain's cabin, which is covered with mold much thicker than everywhere else and is lit red like a Dario Argento movie.
It's so good.
Like, this whole movie is almost like if Dario Argento still did his colors but was more subtle about it. It's very interesting. Like, watching this movie after seeing all the horror movies I've seen, I can slowly go, oh, this is like an Argento movie. This is like, a John Carpenter movie. This is like a Romero movie. And it's so funny because all the movies I mentioned are from after that movie.
Yeah.
But this movie wasn't huge, so it's kind of hard to say whether it was known. Though it did get an Italian release. So maybe Argento did see it.
Maybe. It's just one of those movies, man, that I think, like, in retrospect, it just did so many things right. And it did things right that are still hard to do today. In terms of telling a story, like when it gets into the paranoia and shit. I just think it was way too clever for its own good at the time. But I agree. I think it's remarkable. Like, all the color in that scene is fantastic. Everything just looks kind of gross and wet, and
wet and dry at the same time. Like, it's weird because it looks like this wet sickness, but it also seems like this dried, dead thing.
I was kind of getting the inclination that section was suffering from dry rot, and that is where the funguses are growing. They grow in the water, but they absorb all the moisture out of everything they're growing on, so it creates that sort of dry rot look that was there. And as far as the various colors and the lighting, I kind of got the feeling of sort of Basil Gogos' artwork. He's the guy that did a lot of covers for Famous Monsters of Filmland, and he does those stark contrasting colors on opposite sides, and his work as soon as you see it, just the way that it is. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
All right.
That's a good reference. At first, I was like, gonna be like, oh, look at you dropping some classical painter. And then you said Famous Monsters in Filmland. And I was like, oh, yeah, I know those covers.
Yeah,
and
that's even better than a famous painter. That's paintings I care about.
Yeah.
Well, that's how I work. I care about a certain niche of things in this world. And to me, Basil Gogos is the painter.
Right on.
There's nobody better as far as I'm concerned.
For Godzilla fans, I'll put it this way. He's like the Bob Eagleton of it. Because if you're a Godzilla fan, you know Bob Eagleton's Godzilla work. Because it looks way better than what you would think a giant monster movie deserves when it comes to art. So, either way, the owner Kasai ends up finding Koyama eating food down there. Yoshida is with him, and this is kind of where we now move into the ship. We are going to clean this place up and live here. And as soon as they move in, we start off with a split because Kasai, who's rich, he hides away in the captain quarters and cleans a gun, and he thinks cleaning a gun is the same thing as, helping making plans to get off the island. He thinks that this one tiny thing he did is equal to saving them.
Well, you never know when a gun is going to save you. You definitely need to have an operational gun. I'm kind of with the guy on this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in the grand scheme of things, he's not actually talking with the other leaders of the ship to figure out how we can save the whole situation. He's just focusing on fixing the one thing that's going to make him more powerful than the others.
Again, I still feel like you're talking about somebody here.
I don't know what you're talking about, Cort.
I'm sorry, Jerry. I don't know what it is, but you keep triggering things in me here.
I trigger people sometimes, you know? That's just what I do. I talk about designs made of snow and stuff. So they find out that there's nothing living on this island. Yoshida starts talking shit to Kasai and to Kasuda, and Morai has to be the level-headed one to be like, y'all chill the fuck out. You're starting to, once again, they're starting to focus on the dynamic of the characters now in a new setting.
Yeah. Because all of this is just like, okay, who's in charge? And only a handful of people seem to care about, like, we just need to get out of this. You know, and it like you said, it's just it becomes all these like interpersonal conflicts, and kind of character driven conflicts as opposed to, you know, hey, here comes the monster. Right now, all we know for sure is they're like, hey, fucking don't eat the mushrooms, okay? That is the one rule of our little tribe, because we don't like anything we can find on the island to eat. Fine, but the mushrooms are probably not cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's never a good idea just to eat a mushroom unless you know for sure, and even then, unless it's the absolute last thing you have to eat.
I mean, I would eat a mushroom over an onion.
So many of them are so poisonous, though. I mean, onions aren't poisonous, but mushrooms are.
Onions are poison. They're made out of pure oblivion. You just don't. They're just waiting for their time to strike, and all you people that have consumed onions are going to regret it one day. You wait.
Hey, you know what? If the onions are that smart, let them have it.
Yeah, that's what you think.
I, for one, welcome our onion overlords.
Yeah, I'm going to be in the Vichy onion government.
No, I will be fighting the real freedom because I know the truth. I know that the chemtrails are actually tiny molecules that are used to reflect the sun away so that when climate change happens, it doesn't burn up the earth so that the onions can't live here, so that they will be able to take over. But all you people out there are like, oh no, chemtrails are just, you know, that's just clouds. It's not. It's tiny particles of sulfur and stuff like that that can reflect sunlight. I know what's going on. I know the truth that the government doesn't want you to know about. So yeah, we.
I like a lot of your ideas. I'd like to subscribe to your newsletter.
It'll be coming soon. We see the ego of everyone come out here. You have Kasai. He's rich. He's the owner of the boat. He doesn't have to live with everyone else. Yoshida, you know, he writes. He has imagination. He's better than all these squares. So he can talk back to them because he can out talk them. He's a writer. Then you have Sakuda and Murai, who are actually being level-headed because they're apparently the most adult here and the most responsible, with one being a professor who has to teach and one being, you know, a captain of a boat who has to run a boat, keep things in order and stuff like that. You've got Akiko still not doing anything. You've got Mimi still just being pretty, and you have our sailor, Koyama, who also kind of has an ego of his own where he's like, none of what you used to do in the old world matters. What matters now is being able to survive, and y'all don't have survival instinct. I do. I'm from the streets. He's the Wu-Tang Clan of this outfit.
He's already sizing up which one of them he has to eat first.
Pretty much. And that's not including the different kind of eating he wants to do with the two females.
Yeah, he gets real rapey real fast and made me real uncomfortable.
Real rapey. We will get into that.
Yeah, he's the one that's like most likely to become a cult leader in this scenario.
He goes full Leslie Nielsen from Day of the Animals in this scene.
Yes, he does. Well
Wow,
said.
we are dropping references that no one's going to get. I'm so proud of you guys.
Look, if y'all don't know the Leslie Nielsen Day of the Animal reference, that's on y'all.
You really, yeah, you got to see that
yeah,
movie.
it
It's
really is.
fantastic.
It's incredible.
So Yoshida goes to make a signal fire and dreams about all of them at a fancy club where Mimi sings and how civilized they are. They're all sitting there enjoying their time. Akiko decides to go on the trip and they give her this necklace that's a gold chip steering wheel that you've most likely seen the skipper wearing because he's the only one that wears it prominently. This is them all sharing and borrowing. This is where the conversation comes up that Bo referenced earlier, where the rich guy, Kasai, he just borrows other people's idea. And that's the way of the world. The new generation borrows from the old generation and improves it. Even writers does it. This is where you see them being able to share. The thing here is in the civilized world, they can openly share. They can do that. But now on this island, we are going to see that sharing is no longer caring when you don't care.
Yeah, like this becomes the show Survivor pretty quick. There is some investigation of the mushrooms. They like find a tree just covered in mushrooms. It's Mirai.
Mirai and Kasai.
Yeah, just that like, hey, look at all these mushrooms on this fucking tree, and then off in the distance scurries a little mushroom person.
What was that? What did they do? Why does that sound like a fucking turkey that's injected helium?
I don't know. That's how mushroom people sound to me in my head.
I
think about them too often.
That's Mushroomist.
Oh, well,
Wow.
I grew up in a different time.
When it was okay to hate on mushroom people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least mimic their walk.
Yeah, and the other important thing here is that the birds are afraid to be here. Sakuda and Koyama are working on fixing the boat. They notice all the other sunken boats. You've got the girls trying to, pick up shit that doesn't really matter. Anyway, they all go back to the boat. Koyama makes it back to the ship first and finds out that the food has been locked up. As we get to nighttime, Koyama, the hippest of them all, who wears his sunglasses at night, he decides that he's going to go and, I guess, rape one of the girls. But as he opens the door, there's a sound and he runs away. But before that, the girls, Akiko, actually sees something looking in through the window right before the door opens. So they barely even get to talk about it. It's like this big thing happened, but then something else happened that took your attention completely away from it. It's like if they had done an investigation on someone and then we threw that all out the window because some big celebrity had something happen to them. It's kind of like that.
Yeah, except the celebrity was rape.
Yes. Alleged possible rape.
Right. Attempted.
Yes.
Big on the attempt, father.
Yeah.
But
sorry.
yes, but we do, and this gets to one of the big controversies when this movie came out and why it was banned for a little while, was because of the first lumpy mushroom person you see, which just has kind of welts all over the face and whatnot, but is mostly a person, and it looked too much like the boils from the blast at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and they felt that Honda was capitalizing on that horror. Which
I could see where that would be super controversial in its day.
Yeah, it completely was, to the point where the movie for a little while was like, you can't put this in theaters, which is, it's crazy that it was that controversial, but I kind of like the lumpy head makeup, though. It makes me happy.
Yeah, and
I actually thought they were doing that intentionally. I thought they were trying to make it look like the type of boils from the radiation sickness.
100%.
Because, yeah, like it totally like looked like they were doing that intentionally, but it didn't feel exploitative. It just felt like a shortcut to say there's something infecting them that is killing them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 100% on purpose. That's if it wasn't for the fact that we see the boat with the Geiger counter and the turtle, I would maybe be like, oh no, it's not like that at all. But it clearly is.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, we find out that Kasai is also there, and he's trying to steal some food. But as Mirai and Sakuta run to go check on the sounds, and they meet up with the girls, the bumpy-headed monster ends up showing up, and bam, we fucking kind of see a shadow as Kasai runs away, and then we just kind of fade into the morning.
Yeah, it's probably my least favorite thing in the movie. It's like, no, why are we cutting away from this? Like, this is just when it's getting good. I mean, I guess that's, the point, but still, it's like, no, that seems a little too convenient. That was just like, and then he left,
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't a real big fan of that, but it's really weird, because it just stops out, and the ending even plays out kind of like a dream with a wavy water effect as you see the creature, and it disappears into the background of the door now being closed. And we immediately jump to them all sitting in silence and eating until Koyama, who did not see the monster, yells at them saying they've gone crazy and they're seeing ghosts. And, he also says that, he's bothered by all the girls, and that's what's really getting everybody. And tonight he might take Mimi. And, and he's like, yeah, see, none of you are going to do shit about it. Well, Yoshida pulls the gun out, and Koyama pulls out a knife. And then Koyama claims that Mimi and Yoshida go into the jungle for a little bit of that, pound for pound lovemaking.
Mm-hmm.
The owner Kasai comes back with, he knows what kind of woman she is. And we're all like, damn, this is getting into some good drama. I am feeling this. This
is where he turns full Leslie Nielsen at the end of Day of the Animals in this sequence.
Yes. And Mirai, he shows Koyama the footprints to prove that they weren't imagining it. It was a real thing. Yeah. So at this point, we're about to get into the good stuff, but I kind of want to ask Cort, for your first time watch, where were you at when you were watching this movie? Like, what was going through your head now that it's really about to start kicking in? Like, everyone's starting to turn on themselves. We know there's something else on this island. The first half of this movie, what are your thoughts?
All right. If you take away all of the somewhat supernatural or creatures of an unknown origin that is the mushroom stuff that is going on, if you just focus in on the elements that's happening here, for the most part, they're trapped on a desert island with very limited resources. They're all constantly starving. They're all turning on each other, and bad shit is about to happen, regardless of everything else. I'm in on all of that drama, and I'm totally fucking loving this. And the thing that this reminded me of at this point is like that episode of The Terror when it turns out, hey, that ain't a fucking polar bear. It's something much, much worse. Mm-hmm. And that's when, like, it's that same feeling I got watching this that I got when you're like, holy shit, that thing is really fucking smart. And then you kind of realize, holy shit, this fungus is sentient and it's coming for them. Like, was right here. You kind of see that it's like testing the waters and just kind of slowly but surely working its way in and doing reconnaissance and all that. And I just had goosebumps. I was so in on this point, and I was just like edge of my seat watching it for the rest of the movie. I was fucking in love.
Yeah, I mean, it's the raptors testing the fences in a way. And like earlier, you had the setup of like, hey, I'm from the captain's log, where it's like, hey, we sent people out for food to look for food on the island. It's just none of them ever came back. And
yeah, that's the part that reminded me sort of The Terror too, where I was like, oh god, they are so fucked.
Right. Like, we can't even look for food. They're like, we're that fucked.
Right, you look for food, you're losing that mouth. You don't have to worry about feeding it anymore.
Yeah, I guess that's what you do. Like, you draw the short straws. Like, who's going to be the hero today, and see if you come back with nothing.
Yeah, so we get back into it, and Koyama kind of tells them, y'all just can't sit around and do nothing, which is probably what they would do. You know, they're rich people. They're sophisticated. He's from, you know, the side of town where you got to survive, and he's like, you can't sit around and do nothing. Did you know you can eat roots? You can go eat roots. Go fucking eat roots. You've never had to do that, but you can do it. And the hierarchy is kind of changing in this conversation. Being rich in Tokyo does nothing here. You gotta do something. So
yeah, I really like the power shift where it's the people that know how to survive are basically the ones that get left in charge, because nobody else knows what to do, and they're going to die if they don't listen.
Pretty much, like, the people that are in charge are not really in charge. The guy who's threatening to rape and kill people is the one who's actually coming up with a plan.
Right. Part of the plan is rape and murder, and that's unfortunate. But he is a go-getter.
You know what? You have to motivate people, you know? You
Sure.
can't just, like, sometimes you gotta be rough. You gotta be like, look here, Rocket Man, okay? You're gonna do whatever I say, okay?
Wait, are you sure you're not talking about a specific person, Jerry?
No, I'm saying Rocket Man because some of these characters have been in rockets in other Toho movies. What else would I be referring to?
I have no clue,
So
man. I'm sorry.
weird.
I just, I feel like I'm ruining the show. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I mean, I'm glad
I'm
we're
sure you can
sparking
edit it
something. I'm just going to edit Cort completely out.
Well, that's the only way to improve your show.
Yeah. So we go in there, we go back, and, you know, we have this really weird scene. And this is the one scene in the movie that I really don't understand why it's in here, so I'm curious to see how y'all feel about it. It's the beach scene where Akiko is digging up seaweed or something, and she hears a voice that you can't recognize she actually hears. It's just a voiceover of Akiko, this is your mother.
Yeah. I took it as like she is looking for, or like she is so desperate to be saved or be safe. She is basically kind of like what Yoshida did of, I'm going to invent this thing because I need it so badly, is the way I always read that. But I don't know.
It's just weird.
Yeah,
she doesn't
weird.
recognize anything on her face. Like, her face is just
right.
bland.
It's completely passive of just but
Like,
it's keeping up the brave face. I think it's just like I am the model Japanese woman. I mean, like, despite this inner turmoil, I express nothing.
I mean, I guess. Cort, what's your take on that?
I just kind of thought that maybe in times of comfort, she basically tries to come up with what her mother would say to her in this kind of moment, almost like a sage advice kind of thing. Like, look to your ancestors, look to your past, or something along those lines. That's just kind of how I took it, was her imagination. But that ties into my overall, like, vision of what I felt I was actually seeing in the movie. And I don't want to kind of reveal that just yet until, like, the final thoughts area, but it started to develop here where I felt like we spend a lot of time in people's heads, and, like, their perception of reality is slowly changing as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Mirai finds some roots, Koyama finds turtle egg, and Yoshida makes alcohol. You know, just normal things.
Yeah.
Necessity.
Yeah. Kasai shows up as Yoshida's making his drink. Yoshida accuses Kasai of stealing food from the other night, points out that he likes to point out flaws in others, but not in himself. They kind of talk shit to each other. Yoshida then grabs the gun and says he's going to go hunt for the thing that scared everyone, because he also didn't see it. Kasai's like, don't do it, I think it was human, and Yoshida responds that he hopes so he can talk to him. And he says this very interesting thing. He says, I'll be very interested in what he says. A man thinks strange things when he's out of his mind. His reality may be more fascinating than ours, and it wouldn't matter what he ate. This is one of the times that the script shines with showing how this is how the writer thinks. He is no longer thinking about survival. he's no longer thinking of any of that. He's thinking, how can I make my life interesting? He's always written things to make his life interesting, and it almost seems like he wants to talk to this person as if it's inspiration for another novel. You know what I mean?
Well, and he's also probably better at abstract thought, particularly in a time of crisis, compared to the other folks. He may be realizing that he's seeing things differently than everybody else, and that the things that he is or is not seeing could be attributed to their environment, and maybe their reality is being altered from lack of food and everything else. I think he's hinting at, he thinks that everybody else is hallucinating, and he wants to see if they are, and if this other person that they may be encountering could also be having some kind of altered reality. And he's down. Like, he's like, yeah, let's do this. Let's listen to, King Crimson and eat some of those mushrooms.
Yeah. I really think that's what we're getting at with him. It's just like, oh yeah, he's the hippy dippy one that as soon as, things get slightly uncomfortable, he's like, yeah, I'll get down with some mushrooms. It's cool.
Yeah. And then we have Koyama hiding his eggs. And this scene is interesting because an unknown person sees him hiding the eggs. It's one of those things that you kind of maybe don't even realize is important until later. So, Cort, did you notice this?
I actually didn't notice him hiding the eggs. I must have looked away for a moment.
Well, it's not the fact that he's hiding eggs. It's the fact that while he's hiding eggs, there's a shot of the trees moving, and he looks around to see if anyone's there.
Yeah, I guess I must have missed that one. I'll have to check it out again and see if I can catch it the next time around.
Yeah, I think it's one of the smaller things that, like, later on when we get to it, you'll realize why that scene was, like, important. I guess not important, but it was more of them going, like, they ticked off a box, so, like, later when you go back to watch it to see if that person could have done that, it's there.
Yeah,
totally.
So one of those the thing moments kind of deals. Of like,
yeah, like when the dog goes into the room and you notice the shadow's haircut so you can figure out who it is.
Well, and the eggs are also important because we now live in a world of an egg-based economy where these eggs are going to the fucking highest bidder on this ship, which is pretty rad.
Yeah, if you can sell eggs like he can sell eggs, you're made. Yeah. So Yoshida, all he finds is fucking mushrooms. Not that great. So Kuda goes to the captain's quarters, because he's the skipper, and he takes the keys from the owner Kasai, tells Kasai that he can't be trusted. He will have to eat and sleep with the rest of them and work with them also. Kasai's like, I don't sleep well with others, blah, blah. Then Kasai reminds him that he took care of him and his family, put him through college. But Sakuda replies with a very sharp remark of, you pretended to be a friend but treated me like a dog. So you learn new information that they have probably known each other their whole life. And Sakuda, while being friends with high society, is not high society.
Sure. Yeah, you're still the help.
Yes. Mirai shows up and brings in a couple of small roots. Koyama brings in 14 turtle eggs. And then a bunch of huge roots to show how much better he is at all of this than everyone else. Yoshida also comes back and he's no longer wearing a shirt and he's sweating profusely. It's very sexy. I'm very glad for this shot. I like sweaty Asian guys in bucket hats.
Sure.
I'm a big fan. I also want to say... is he the Gilligan of this since he wears a bucket hat?
Kinda, yeah. And, also he's stoned. Like, when he comes in and he's like, they're like, hey, motherfucker, you didn't show up with any food. You don't get to eat tonight. And he's like, whatever. I'm cool. I'm not.
He's like, Mirai's like, hey, you didn't eat those mushrooms, did you? And Yoshida's drunk and high reply is, well, that's a question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
it's a fucking question.
Uh-huh.
Answer it.
It's the equivalent of when you come home late and your parents are like, you haven't been doing any drinking. And you go, no.
Yes, no. Mom. Water. H2O. Jeez.
Yeah, exactly.
Gatorade sucks.
Yeah, it's a real non-denial denial.
Exactly. So then we have the scene of Koyama selling eggs to Kasai. Then we get to go to Yoshida making out with Mimi. Koyama walks in and a fight breaks out. A knife comes out. Mirai and Sakuda, of course, the ever-doting parents, come up and break up the excitement. And, you know, Koyama's like, hey, we agreed to leave the women alone, even though he's been threatening to rape them this entire time. But Sakuda's like, so you had no right to fight him, you're just jealous. And my question is, because Mirai's, you know, saying the same shit, but would Mirai act the same way if it would have been Akiko? If it would have been him and Akiko making out, and the fight would have been breaking out? Would he have been like, oh, you know what, you're right, that's no reason to fight, yep, Kind of, you see the hypocrisy between the high class and the low class. With the low, you were just jealous of them because you're low class and they're high class. It's not, I don't think it's, like, you've been threatening to rape them this whole time, and now you're going to get mad because he is actually getting some? You're low. Yeah. This scene is really about, once again, the dynamic and the hypocrisy of the low class versus the high class.
And also in this moment, you know, Mimi, our messy bitch who loves drama, immediately is like, it starts bragging to Akiko of like, everybody loves me. They can't help it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I love that move. That is, you know, one of the things about her character that I love, that, like I said, she's a messy bitch who loves drama, to paraphrase the show The Good Place.
Yeah. So it's great. So Yoshida shows up with a gun and he says he will kill them all. He's mad, and Yoshida, well, he admits to eating the mushrooms. And he goes, to your understanding, eating the mushroom no longer makes you human. So when I kill you, it won't be murder. This is a very interesting statement, because I could almost see, like, Hitler saying this to the Jewish people. It's not murder because you're Jewish.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's dehumanizing for sure.
Like, and what's funny, though, is not only is it dehumanizing, but it's him almost saying, like, I'm the next step in human evolution because I did this crazy thing. And while you stayed regular, you're now becoming a dog.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, like, he also, it shows a preference for Akiko here.
Well, yeah, because he can get Mimi all he wants, but now he can get Akiko too if he kills all of them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you know, he's on the mushrooms. You know, he's out of his gourd.
Yeah, it's fucking King Kong all over again.
Uh-huh. It's King Kong and the berries, man, except it's the reverse, where it makes you shoot stuff instead of chill out.
That's true. But you know what? He might shoot stuff, but he seems very chill. He has the most apathetic looking face I've ever seen. Like, if Akiko has the most boring face, he has the most apathetic face. Apathy is a cold body, and it resides in him.
Yeah, so what to carpenter all this up a little more, they finally, like, kill the
build
lights.
A table out of tree. Oh wait, wrong carpenter. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they kill the lights and they rush Yoshida and get the gun away from him. Who, by the way, has, when they do that, his expression there, that's what made me think of it, is his expression is just like, oh, they got me. Like, he is not that upset about this. And they're like, hey, we got to lock you up. We can't trust you anymore. You've gone crazy. And he's like, all right, it's cool, man. And it's the confidence of knowing, I suppose, like, oh, no, you're all going to get God. It's fine. Lock me wherever you want.
Yeah, pretty much. He does not care. So Kasai tries to convince Kasuda to leave the others behind, but Kasuda wants nothing of it. He is the skipper, and he would never do something like that. He would never, ever do something like that. Ever. So, all the food's been stolen, and, Sakuda turns out he stole all the food, even the turtle eggs that I was talking about earlier where someone saw him leave it. He stole all the food and then took the boat and leave, which makes me feel like an asshole because I just said he would never do that.
Look, you never know anybody, really.
Yeah, and when I first watched this, I always thought this was really weird because this whole thing, you're like, Kasuda's such a good guy. Him and Mirai are the only two good people, and then he ups and does this, which makes you wonder, did he always have this idea? Was this always his plan? Did he, when Kasai tried to do this, did he just lose faith in everybody and just say, fuck it, I'm going to go save myself? Like, what do you, like, Bo, what do you think on that?
No, I do think that, I think that the argument to leave everyone behind got to him some. But it's also like, well, if we're in it for ourselves, then why the fuck would I be going with you? Like, why don't I just take all the shit and get out of here? And I don't think that's a totally wrong-headed move in this scenario.
Yeah, Cort, how do you feel with it being your first time watching it?
I didn't blame him at all, and I kind of felt like he was doing a little bit of subterfuge, and I agree with what Bo said. I think the reason he was doing the subterfuge is he's like, why the fuck would I want to leave with you? You are the least person that I want to survive this whole entire thing. And I think he just kind of did a survey around of the people that he's with, and he's like, you know what? I don't care about any of these other people. I need to survive. I'm out.
Yeah,
because they're all dragging him down. They're going to get him killed, and he knows it.
Yeah, literally, Kasai is the only one that he's actually known for a long time. And then the only one he technically should feel responsible for is the sailor, Koyama. But hell, he's been threatening to kill people and rape people, and fuck him, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to be left alone with that guy when I got to fall asleep and nothing but food that's barely enough to keep us going. I'm definitely not taking him. I'd rather take my chances on my own.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And then on top of all that, Yoshida escapes.
Well, like maybe his mall, apparently, he shows up with her in tow, and she's like, yeah, the Mushroom Twins are here, and by the way, we want the girl. How much for the women?
Yeah.
How much for the little girl?
Uh-huh.
And as everyone's talking about, how Sakuda did this, Yoshida's like, I don't think Sakuda ever had a high opinion of them. And you know what? He's probably fucking right. And he even makes the joke. He wonders how many times he's written something like this in one of his novels, which is so interesting because I talked about earlier how he wanted to go talk to the mushroom people to, I said earlier that I thought it was him, almost his interest in talking to them was almost as if he was going to write a novel. And now he's kind of like, look, my life has become my novel.
Yeah. This of course doesn't last long because, our pal, the captain, shows up.
Nope.
Skipper, sorry.
Nope.
What?
Sailor, shit.
And is like, hey, I'm gonna tackle Yoshida, and Yoshida's like, fuck you, and just pops a couple of caps in him, drops him, but it opens a window for Mirai and et al. To turn the tables to get the rifle away and ultimately get Yoshida and Mimi to walk the plank. They're like, hey, you mushroom weirdos, get out of here.
Yeah, you know what's weird, though? Yoshida is really good at grabbing a gun, really shitty at actually putting it to any effect. But when he was fighting Koyama earlier on over Mimi, like, when Koyama pulled a knife on him, Yoshida didn't give a shit. He was still ready to fight. Yet he constantly loses every wrestling match that happens in this movie.
Yeah, not a lot of core strength on Yoshida.
But he was throwing punches and hitting Koyama pretty easily. And I'm just like, what the fuck is going on with you? You, like, at some point can throw a punch, but then you can't, like, shoot someone properly. Like, come on, man.
I was just pissed that he kept wasting bullets at their feet trying to scare them away when after the first one they didn't even move faster. I was like, dude, you may need those for suicides at the very least.
Nah,
Right.
he's not a suicide guy.
No, I meant the other people may need them for suicides.
They're
at the
not
very
suicide
least.
guys either. We find that out later, though. So they kick Yoshida and Mimi off the ship and tell them to go eat mushrooms.
Right.
Mimi even begs Kasai, but Kasai throws in her face what she said earlier about you liking Yoshida better. So, ladies, remember, be careful who you say who you like better. They may eventually have the gun.
Especially if they give it to you in a note that says, do you like me? Circle 1, yes or no.
Yeah.
Be careful, because that's entrapment.
It is. Ask to see your lawyer first. Or fire him before someone comes in and raids his office.
Ask if they're a cop. They have to tell you.
Actually, if they don't, I found out that that's not fucking true.
I prefer to believe my delusion. Thank you.
Okay, fair enough. Eat some mushrooms. So we see a beautiful thing of Koyama on the ground dead with money around him, which is about as in your face as this movie can be.
Yeah. I mean, subtlety maybe. I take that back. I was going to say subtlety isn't Matango's thing. It actually kind of is most of the time, which makes a moment like this like, oh, right, of course.
Yeah, it does. Like, a lot of times it is very subtle, but there are other times where it's just like, hey, let me shove this in your face.
I'm willing to give them this indulgence at this point, because it's enough to where if you're really looking for messages, you're going to find it, but if you're just a casual average viewer, you're just like, oh, rich guy dies with a lot of money. Ha ha ha.
Actually, poor guy dies with a lot of the rich man's money.
Well, if it's yours when you die, you're rich.
Well, I mean, I don't think it was enough to be rich. He'd probably blow it all in a fucking week on blowing hookers.
Check and mate.
Looks like I would. I mean, I don't blame him. That's what I would do with it.
One of my favorite shots in this movie is like as soon as they kick him off the boat, it's like, oh, and now the rainy season has come, and you just get this shot of mushrooms blossoming from the earth.
That was creepy as shit.
It really
music.
is.
The music is so good right here. Fun fact, the stuff they use to make the mushroom grow is a chemical that would later become styrofoam. This was before styrofoam was actually made. A company had invented this thing, and normally they were just going to make the mushroom grow with like the typical like cotton candy thing. But the guy who was working in special effects, his friend worked with this company that were trying to figure out something they could do with this chemical. And he showed it to him that when this chemical meets oxygen, it balloons up. And they found out that if you put it in canisters, you can kind of make it balloon into mushrooms. They even talked about how using different style of canisters would make it go in certain ways. So they ended up using that for this movie. That chemical would later go on to be the main ingredient for styrofoam.
And also the Wendy's Frosty.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for ruining Wendy's Frosties for me. I mean, they were already ruined because I'm diabetic now, but thanks for making it worse.
And pretty much all milkshakes, too. It's the same
kind
of food
Go
thickener.
Fuck yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were 3. It's been raining for weeks, and Kasai says he's finished. Mirai says they can't give up, but Kasai wishes they would kill him, as he doesn't have the courage to kill himself. Now, here's the thing. I feel bad for the guy. How bad does it suck when you want to die and you are too much of a pussy to do it yourself? Which is kind of strange because a lot of people say that people that kill themselves are pussies, but this guy's saying he's too much of a pussy to do it. So yeah. I don't know where you stand there, but I call you a pussy if you're too afraid to kill yourself. Kasai.
Well,
so
he kind of gets his here because Mamie all hopped up on the mushrooms and the jazz cigarettes.
The yayo.
The gank. The clean burning propane. I can't not do it at this point. And she shows up on the ship, and is like, hey, I love this whole scene is just creepy as fuck to me, where she's like, hey, what's up? It seems like you guys are starving up here and whatnot. And he's like, yeah, you know, how'd you survive out there? And she's like, I haven't been hungry since I left. I've been eating that mushroom jack, and it's good. And he falls to his knees and begs her for help. And this is where she gives him this look where it's just like, oh man, she has become one with the shroom. You know, where she's like, yes, pet. Yes. Come with me. I'll feed you.
But it's also her showing her dominance of him, because she admits earlier she was using him to like go to Europe. So she had to kind of do things that he wanted to do. She had to ask him for help. And she replied after Kasai asked her for help, she replies, now you finally know what it means to ask for help. Mm-hmm. Which is very important, because once again, this is the dynamic of a rich person, you know, the higher up having to ask for help, or you could even look at it as the man having to ask the woman for help, you know, whichever way you look at it.
Yeah, it's a total power dynamic shift in all directions, which is really wonderfully done.
And the other thing important about this is also how the mushroom has affected Mimi in a different way than it's affected everyone else, which we haven't truly seen yet, but we will see when the others when we see the others, how the mushroom has affected. For Mimi, it's different. She actually looks more beautiful. It's like it's instead of growing like green fungus on her face, it has grown nice glittery makeup on her. And this is done on purpose. Ishiro Honda, he was like, I don't want to make her look ugly. Is there can't we do something else to show how the mushrooms have affected her? And someone was just like, well, we can make her prettier. And Ishiro Honda was like, God damn right you can. So that's the way they went. That works.
Yeah, so she takes him to the land of the mushrooms. And the whole time he's like, when can we eat? And she's like, a little further. A little further.
Which is funny because she's probably been like, when can we do this? And he's like, a little deeper. And now it's changed.
And then she finally like starts eating a mushroom, and she's like, you should have been doing this all along, dummy. And so he starts eating a mushroom too. And then he has a psychedelic drug trip where he sees a bunch of sparkles and pretty ladies and neon lights, and Broadway essentially appears before him.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that he got high and possibly fucked one of the giant mushrooms thinking it was a showgirl, but it could have happened. I'm just saying.
That's what my interpretation was.
Yeah.
I thought that he got high and started plowing a mushroom person.
Yeah. Fun fact, the mushrooms that they're eating are made out of rice pastries that they would go and buy from this little shop right down the road from Toho. And sometimes they would even flavor them to make them taste nice.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
Yeah, very cute. So it's after he eats it that she goes, oh, by the way, once you eat a mushroom, you become one. And, you know, it's kind of like Pringles. Once you start, you just can't stop.
Mm-hmm.
So Yoshida ends up popping up, happy as hell, turning green, kind of looking... Do you remember the from Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, the monkeys with the green face, but one of the guys just kind of had a green birthmark on his face?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. If you've seen Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, you'll remember that. Now, it's kind of like heroin. If someone doesn't tell you, it's super highly addictive right before you do it for the first time to kind of make you go, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this. It's kind of fucked up to tell you afterwards.
Yeah. It's a bad move but she's recruiting for the mushroom team.
Yeah,
So,
it's kind of like saying, I'm going to build this great big thing and I'm going to make someone else pay for it. And then you're like, hell yeah, you've got I agree with you. I'm going to make this happen. And then afterwards, he's like, oh, by the way, now that you've said yes, you're going to pay for it. It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
Weird. Can't think of anybody that might
Nope.
be.
So Kasai tries to run away, but he is surrounded by the Matango because once you get inside of Matango, now they want to get inside of you. So
Turnabout's fair play. You got to switch it.
yeah, exactly.
I really dig. I mean, this is the first time we see the mushroom people proper bouncing around in this movie, and I like the fact that they were all different shapes and stuff. That if it were just like a pre-molded mushroom person outfit, I think it would be less effective and goofier. And like this stands such a chance of being completely ridiculous, but in the context of the movie, I think it all works. And I think they're kind of creepy looking.
The mushrooms are also always kind of background. So it's never like you're seeing it walk towards the camera or something, you know, or something ridiculous. Like, if you've ever watched that old horrible movie, Monster Robot, where they just have a gorilla suit that they put a helmet on top of.
Yeah.
It looks goofy because it's always the main focus as it talks really proper and shoots bubbles at people. And Matango, it's never right in your face. It's always kind of moving in the background in an environment that it looks just like, so it blends in so well. It never looks that goofy.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
Well, Robot Monster really was just a gorilla suit and like a diver's helmet, and they spent no money on it. These mushroom suits, even when you do get a really good glimpse of them, which you don't get like a huge amount of really good glimpses, they're still impressive looking because they're amorphous. There's nothing really similar to any of them. And there's just the way the mushrooms look. It's just like a cluster of this stuff that could have been a person, or perhaps now that they've learned how to mimic people, they are growing like people as well because they've gotten enough broad spectrum DNA from all the people they've taken over. Who knows?
The world may never know.
Yeah, are these the previous victims, or are these mushroom people that are literally growing out of the DNA?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. The way fungus works, I would think it is. It's kind of a mixture of both what you're saying, because it probably took over the old ship, but once those spores start going, the fungus is controlling the body. So it's their bodies. It's the old ship people's bodies, but it's the brain of the fungus.
Yeah, like a hive mind thing. Like, does it absorb the knowledge of the people so it learns how to manipulate people even more?
Yes.
Maybe so. I mean, I don't know that the movie gets into that detail for sure, but I could certainly see the argument for it because all of these things act kind of together. Yeah.
Well, this is where my mind went during this scene where I'm like, holy fuck, like how dangerous and how much of a hive mind can it learn from us? Like I was like really like my mind was just inflamed with all these ideas of what these things could be whenever you see them walking after his drug trip. And I'm just like, holy shit, is any of this even real? Like, or are they all just hallucinating from starvation and some kind of tainted food that they're eating? Like, what the fuck is going on? And I'm just like, again, scooting further and further to the edge of my seat, like really watching this movie intently and loving it at this point.
It's like the first time you watch John Carpenter's The Thing. And you're trying to figure what are the abilities this monster has, who is infected, how does it infect? It's literally all of that. Except with mushrooms, and it's the 60s.
Yeah, it really grabs your attention, and it really makes you wonder, like, is any of this even real? Like, that's the thing that I've been kind of hinting at is, like, are they all hallucinating? Are they killing each other, thinking that they're mushroom people? You know, like, what the fuck is going on in this movie? This is insane.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. This movie is based off the story Voice in the Night by William Hope Hodgson, which in turn is an author that inspired Lovecraft, which in turn is the inspiration for John Carpenter's version of The Thing, which it's from a novel, but John Carpenter's Thing is a very Lovecraftian version of it. So it's kind of interesting how like you can connect Matango to John Carpenter's Thing in so many ways it's not even fucking funny.
Yeah, the source material is very common ground that they have there. They're definitely treading on some of the same ground. And it activates that cosmic horror fear that works so well in my brain.
Yeah, like literally Lovecraft wrote an article about Hodgson's work. So, I mean, it really is influential. But we go back to Mirai, who goes looking for Kasai on the ship. but the ship looks like it's been being taken over again by fungus, which can kind of throw you off. Now, Cort, being your first time, when he goes back on the ship and everything once again out of nowhere is just covered with fungus again, did that throw you off?
I thought it might have been because of the rainy season, the water's kind of seeping in, and the chemicals they used to try and take it back. Like maybe the fungus was encroaching. I didn't really get too far off on that. I was just kind of like, okay, what happened here? How did it grow?
Yeah,
I was just like, somehow it penetrated again, but how?
The first time I saw it, I literally thought that he had found another ship, because I was like, how would the fungus have grown that fast? He literally like left for a few hours, came back, and then all of a sudden everything's covered in fungus again.
Yeah, I don't get too bogged down on the timeline on that, mostly because it's like, oh well, this is the assault, like the fungus is closing in on them, and I think it can be sentient enough that it's like, okay, well, let's grow real fast.
True.
Yeah, it may have also been, if it is that sentient, which is one of the things that I was questioning, perhaps it pulled back and gave them a sense of comfort where it's like, we're going to get them eventually. There's no escape. Let's just let them wear down so it's less of a fight. And then when we have this final push that's happening here, then it's like, okay, this ship is now mine again and you're fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of ships, Mirai goes back out, climbs up a mountain, and sees a boat in the fog. And as he gets closer and gets to the boat, he finds out that it's their yacht, and that Sakuda didn't make it. He left a note saying the crew died on an island, and that he, the captain, died in the sea. He goes back to tell Akiko that the yacht came back and Sakura died, and she basically at this point is giving up and is just like, can we eat the mushrooms now? But no, because now me and Kasai are probably half mushroom, and Akiko now, she wants to kill herself, but Mirai confesses his love to her, which, fun fact, if you see someone about to jump from a bridge, you go, hey, I love you, and they go, well, you know what, the bridge is my mistress, and then they jump off anyway, so you failed. That's from a song about a guy who talks about how his lover is the river, and the bridge is his mistress, as he's committing suicide. Where was I? He confesses his love for her, and I hope they fuck before they die, but instead of that, there's a knocking at the door. Mirai shoots the mushroom-colored hand that tries to open, and then it attacks through the portholes, which is very, Creature from the Black Lagoon-like. Then it tries to break down the walls, which is very zombie-like. And then Mirai breaks off an arm, which looks fucking fantastic, by the way.
Yeah, this whole entire sequence of the sort of surge to attack and all the mushroom people coming into the room that they're barricaded in, it works on so many levels, and it has those echoes of stuff that you would see in Night of the Living Dead later, or even Last Man on Earth, where they're all attacking Vincent Price's house and that kind of thing. And it just activates that survival instinct fear that is just so, it just permeates your very being, where you're like, oh my God, I'm trapped in this room and they're going to get me.
Yeah, and it's all these people that were from that ship who have not turned into the full big bloomed mushrooms yet. They're still kind of in the middle transportation phase. And they're going to bring them back to the full bloom mushroom people, which makes you wonder, are those full bloom mushroom people, are they organic mushrooms, or are they also previous ships that they saw shipwrecked earlier? Are they just from years and years before, so they've gotten to the state of full bloom? There's so much rich history here that you don't know that I just really want to know. I wish this there was a book version of Matango that kind of went into this.
Yeah, how long has this been going on? How cool would it have been if they would have had the money where they go wandering around the island and they're just looking for another place to try and find food or something like that, and they happen upon a shipwreck cove that has old pirate ships, and this shit has been happening for centuries. That would be so cool.
There is that one scene early on where Koyama and Sakuda are on the ship fixing it, when the first scene of them actually trying to fix their yacht, and Koyama looks down and sees all the crashed ships and points out that this happens a lot. So it could have been happening for a long time. There's these little things that give you hints as to what, you can kind of fill out as the background, but I would just love to fucking know more.
Yeah, and also the island moves on its own because the whole island is a fungus.
Okay, this is not giant-sized X-Men #1, so we are not going into that territory, but thanks for playing.
Nice.
I
love that. I make this weird, obscure, dumbass reference, and Jerry picks it up and runs with it.
Yes. So he chases after the monster he broke the arm off of, shoots him in the back. They fight. One of them throws a sheet on him. They try to be, a ghost. Other mushroom men grab a Kiko. He fights another one and pushes over the railing. The other two drag a Kiko away. He heads back down to the room to see that she's missing. There's so much going on here. So Mirai just says, fuck it, and runs into the jungle, into the thick of the mushrooms, looking for his love. But he walked into a Matango gangbang, because they start to surround him as he hears a Kiko call out to him. Now, my fiance loves to do this. Well, she will just see me and she'll go, Mirai. It imitates a Kiko, and it's very adorable. And then I'm like, don't touch me, you mushroom eating freak. And then it's no longer cute. So she's eating the mushroom and is very happy. It's almost as if she's this shy, timid girl is now liberated because she has eaten the mushroom. She did what she's always done what she's been told to do. And now she has broken the rules and is liberated by eating the mind-altering mushrooms, which is very significant because it's kind of like the breaking of the traditional conservative Japanese woman into falling in with the bad crowd of the new Americanized woman of Mimi and eating mushrooms with her and becoming liberated. And next thing you know, she'll be burning her bra. And wanting to vote.
She's two steps away from dating somebody like me.
Yes, exactly. And that's going to be horrible for her.
I've dated me. I know what it's like.
Yeah. So the Matango surround him, and he kind of wrestles past them and others as he watches them eating mushrooms. He tries to get Akiko, but can't, so he just leaves her behind as she calls out his name. And he runs to the beach and swims to the yacht. And he's rescued. And he's sorry that he was. We now go back to the beginning of the movie where he is back in the psychiatric ward. And he's saying if he really was in love with her, he would have stayed and eaten the mushrooms with her. Now, this is where the big change comes up depending on which version you're watching. In the Japanese version, he clearly states he does not eat the mushrooms. And yet he is still affected by what the mushrooms did. So you have to wonder, was it the spores that did it to him, or was it his love for Akiko, or did it just not matter and he was there for long enough that it did affect him? On the other hand, if you watch the American version, the Americans were like, that's too deep, make him say he ate the mushrooms. So he admits to eating the mushrooms while he was on the yacht because he was confused and depressed. So to me, the American version is kind of fucking stupid, but I still love the dub. But the Japanese one kind of shows you that because of the social environment he was in, even though he didn't eat the mushrooms, he was still affected by the spores. Even if you are a conservative, traditional Japanese person, if you are living in this new world environment, you will be affected anyway. Is kind of what they're trying to show in your face.
The hippies are coming for you. They're going to change your world and make you one of them.
Yeah, pretty much. The hippies are coming and the druggies are here. And it's kind of like, he's saying Tokyo is the same as that island. People are just as cruel in this city. And that's where the movie ends with its grand statement of social commentary. And now we're going to kind of get into not only our final thoughts, but we're going to talk about the philosophy in this movie. And I did some research to pull from experts, and what they think of this movie and kind of my interpretation of them, because I do agree with them, but they have more historical context of what Japan was like at the time. So I took what they said and added my own little sugariness to it. So we're going to get into that, but before we get into that, I'm going to open the floor to Cort so he can kind of go into his breakdown of his first time watching this movie, what he thought, what he thinks it means, before I break out words from, Honda and the rest. So Cort, give us your thoughts.
I spent a good amount of time while watching this trying to figure out if this was all in their heads and some kind of a weird hallucination or if it was really happening. And it wasn't until it's revealed that the guy at the very end actually was infected to where I'm like, okay, so there was something on the island, but did they see and experience all the things that they thought they were seeing and experiencing? Or was this fungal infection, did it get them all? And this is just what he saw in his hallucination while other people were experiencing other things. And I like that idea where it's kind of a descent into madness that may be induced by a toxic environment. And I realize that this may be a huge allegory for the Western world coming in and destroying Japanese traditional values and how Honda has a problem with that. And that really fits in with a lot of what Lovecraft stories come from as well, that we were kind of discussing earlier. It's very xenophobic. It's very afraid of the other and this thing that makes you different than who you used to be.
Wait, do you mean Lovecraft might be slightly racist?
Oh, yeah, he's very racist and extremely xenophobic.
Not some white guy who wrote science fiction. That's what are you going to tell me next? L. Ron Hubbard wasn't a fan of homosexuals?
My fear of the Scientologists will not allow me to comment on that, Jerry. But anyway, back to my point.
I ain't scared of them.
But back to my point, though. I really dug it because I was really trying to, in my mind, wrap my head around the idea of, is this reality or is this their perception of reality? And there's enough talk about that going on with the professor guy, the writer, that kind of fluid reality, and the what we see is our reality and our interpretation of it, but that's not what everyone else sees. Yeah. And having that all kind of layered in over top of some of the socio-economic inequality that is happening with the way that when the chips are down and it's time for survival, the people who are prepared for this are the ones who have always had a struggle. And even though they may not be the best people in the world, they're the people that you're going to turn to when the chips are down because they at least know how to survive.
Yeah, the economic meek inherit the earth, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're the tough bastards who have had to live on less than minimum wage, to survive in a world that has definitely bypassed them and just left them behind to just kind of slowly starve and die.
Yeah.
This guy has been hungry his whole life. So it's no different when he's on the island. It just so happens that there's no one there to tell him that he can't talk about how he wants to rape everybody and go full Leslie Nielsen in Day of the Animals.
Yeah, and I want to talk about what you said with not truly knowing if all this really happened or if it was, fever dreams from the hallucinations from the fungus and they have a shared delusion that was going on, because technically some of them didn't see, that first creature walk on the boat. Some of them did, some of them didn't. They're not entirely sure. And I like that because some movies try to pull off the did it happen or didn't happen, it's up to you to decide, and cannot pull it off. Some movies should have done that and at the end of it decided to make you clearly know that it truly was there. I'm looking at you, the witch. Because you didn't have the balls and had to ruin it. I'm sorry, I hate The Witch, and people know about my hatred. It should, okay, real quick, it should have had the balls to never have shown the actual witch in the woods, so that it would have remained a psychological drama of a family being broken down by their religious beliefs and how it destroyed them, and they turn on each other because they are so ingrained with their religion that they think a witch is actually there, much like the Salem witch trials hysteria, but instead it ruins that by actually making witches in a satanic coven be true.
I counterpoint. Yeah. I think the story that it's telling, though, is be careful what world you create, because that's the world you've got to live in.
Oh, I agree. My statement says the exact same thing, except it's you did it to yourself.
Yeah.
Not that, it turns out you were actually 100% correct. The devil is real, God is real, witches are real, and your daughter is a witch.
Right, but but the father in that film drives his family to the fates that they that end up.
But it turns out he was right. That they really are there. He just was so extreme, he was driven from the town, and he was driven right into the hands of what he, said he was going to protect his family from. And this man of God apparently is not good enough for his own God to save him from the work of the devil. So either God doesn't care or God doesn't exist. But if Satan exists, then God exists. So therefore God doesn't care. Okay, I should stop talking about the witch.
Whatever gets me to wouldst thou like to live deliciously? Whatever you gotta do to get me to that place, do it.
Is a great line, and it really makes me want to eat some butter, like just straight out the fucking plastic tub.
It actually really does make me reappreciate how great butter really is.
Not since really last Tango in Paris have I appreciated butter that much.
Speaking of Matango,
go get the butter.
But yes, something that a lot of movies either can't do properly or don't have the balls to do, Matango greatly pulls off, and I'm so glad to hear that the big thing that you took out of it was that not only did this movie pull it off and doesn't truly answer it, but it leaves it up for you to kind of decide. But just the way you described it was so fucking good, Cort.
Oh, well, thank you. That's how I was thinking it the whole way through. And honestly, I actually started it again because I finished it like right around 5:15. And I'm like, I got 45 minutes. I can get through the second half again. And I backed it up from pretty much the last 45 minutes again. And I'm like, I'm watching this again.
Now, you watched the Japanese subtitled version?
No, I watched the English language dub version. So I did see the part that you were talking about where he says he ate the mushroom. So I kind of figured it would help for me to have that so that I could kind of point out the versions that were different, because I figured you guys would watch the subtitled
No,
one.
I watched the dub. I've watched the subtitled one. I just know that at the end, I just dropped the whole him eating mushrooms thing, and I'm good. That dub is really fucking good, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it matches up really well. It fits really well, and usually you have like at least one character in a Toho international dub that has like a really high-pitched, annoying voice that's supposed to be comic relief, and that's not here at all. These are all straightforward, serious character voices in the dub, and it's really effective. I was super impressed with this movie. I want a Blu-ray of it, too.
Yeah, Ishiro Honda said when they were making the movie, he told all his actors that this is a serious drama, so treat it as such. And they did, and they did a wonderful job. Now, Bo, when I was doing my research for this movie to get all my notes proper, I kind of wondered if I even need to, because of how great of a job you do of researching Japanese movies and what the time was like in Japan when those movies were made and what they were saying. So I'm kind of interested, even if you didn't do research, just with the knowledge you have, what your thoughts on this movie are.
Let me begin with sorry. I think this is basically Grandpa Ishiro's complaint about those kids and their loud music in a lot of ways. It's very, like I said, culturally speaking, this is the beginning of not just a cultural shift in the teenagers in Japan, but this is also, there's a bit of an artistic shift. You're starting to see some of those motorcycle movies, which is a crazy subgenre in Japan, like more so than I think even in the US in the 50s.
Yeah, they kind of replaced the Salaryman movies.
Yeah, and they became this crazy like counterculture, and they were kind of punk rock. They weren't just like, the westerns of the American cinema, where it's just like, oh, well, this is a genre everyone seems to like, so we're just going to make a million of these. Like, all of them were about, like, you know, James Dean types and shit like that, because that's what they were all spawned from. So they all had this kind of fuck you authority attitude. And so in a lot of ways, I think this is Honda defending in a weird way the kind of movie he makes. And also putting his, like I said, Dragnet-esque spin on, you know, hey, this, like, these kids are going to do the dope, and it's going to make them lazy and shiftless, and they're just going to want other people to do the dope with them. And I honestly think that is 90% of this movie. It's just that that everything else around it is so brilliant. And, like, the message itself, I don't think is that striking in a weird way. It's just that, like, the scene where Mirai runs after Akiko, and when he finds her, he realizes that she's already eaten the mushroom, because she's all prettied up and she's eaten a mushroom. That's the real giveaway, it turns out. And she says to him, they're so delicious, you really need to, like, you need to eat one. And it reminds me so much of that scene in Kaufman's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where Brooke Adams becomes the pod person, and she's like, it doesn't hurt, you know, it's fine, just give in. And it's that kind of thing that hits me on this, like, primal, like, identity level, where you have this loss of self that I find kind of terrifying and intriguing all at the same time. And I think that's what Matango does a real good job of at way too early an age. It would be like if you heard that a 4-year-old directed The Exorcist. You're just like, no, you shouldn't be able to do that at this time. And because Matango happened so early in not just, like, Japanese horror cinema, but because it's kind of, you know, of the time where there were a lot of monster movies, but there wasn't really a movie like this. And I think the green slime is kind of in this weird ballpark of, like, it seems real salacious and weird, but the movie itself is something kind of creepy and uncanny and uncomfortable. And it really, Matango has always gotten under my skin, and it still does. When I watch it now, I come away from the movie feeling uncomfortable and wet, usually.
This feels a lot to me like the Japanese perspective post-World War II, similar to what we were getting in Kevin McCarthy's version of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where it's that fear of everything's changing around you, and the world that you once knew is now gone. And what is happening is this slow infestation of something that's completely different than your ideology, and you can't live in this world anymore.
Right.
That xenophobia in both of those films mirrors really well. And I would love to do a double feature of both of those back to back and kind of compare the cultural shock of it.
Of both the Invasion movies or the Invasion movies in Matango?
Of Invasion 59, I think it is, isn't it? Or like,
I'll double check, but that sounds right.
Yeah, I think it's like it's late 50s, and like at the earliest it's late 50s. But like Invasion of the Body Snatchers with Kevin McCarthy, the old black and white one, and Matango, I want to watch them back to back and just kind of like almost like a comparative thesis kind of thing, like to see the cultural shock that is being presented on screen of the fear of the change from your traditional values and what you know and into a world that you can no longer live in anymore because it is so left field of what you would have been used to. Yeah, I really like that idea.
What's really funny about this being, you know, a movie that is kind of saying, I don't like how Japan is becoming Americanized, is that, you know, the original Godzilla from 1954 was a movie that was made freshly out of the lift that happened from American occupation, where they were like, you can't make any movies that talk about nuclear weapons, you can't make anything that's anti-American. Like, we had a very tight grip on Japan and what they could do. And once that was lifted, Godzilla was one of the very first couple of movies that actually did point that finger and did talk about it. And I think Ishiro Honda at that point was like, now that the lift is gone, we will go back to being Japanese. But the problem is that's not what happened. Japan, instead of that, started becoming more Americanized. And this movie is a critique of the shallowness and self-centered attitudes that came when it started getting Americanized, especially in 1960 when elected Prime Minister Hayato Akida's income doubling plan started, where he rapidly boosted the economy. They had the Olympics coming to Japan in 1964. So they were building stadiums and they were getting all this stuff. And Minister Hayato's plan was to use Western style Western style consumerism. And it ended up creating a bigger middle class, which was great. They could buy, refrigerators and washing machines, stuff that they normally would not have been able to buy. But the rich also got richer, which means their children became what Bo was talking about. They were going to school in sports cars. They were taking their parents' yachts out. There was a story that happened in Japanese news that caught Honda's attention when a couple of rich kids took their parents' yacht and they traveled too far out to sea and had to be rescued by the Japanese government. And originally, the first draft of this did involve all teenagers. It was all kids. Honda really didn't like that they were becoming Americanized and these modernized, spoiled children. They didn't have respect for structure in government, and they didn't respect their elders, and they didn't respect tradition. They were playing their music too loud and watching motorcycle movies. And this movie calls into question when people like that break the unspoken respect for authority we see in a government. When that's gone, when that's suppressed, what happens to us? Right. The writer goes mad with lust. The rich man hoards his food. The captain leaves them all behind. The sailor extorts money. And the singer enjoys being fought over. When all you have is your own ego controlling you with no rules, and you can let your Freudian fucking slips go everywhere, what happens? It's the themes of dehumanization and the collapse of society and structure that can be seen in many movies, even Japanese movies. You look at Battle Royale, which luckily, I'll be doing an episode on this, another Legion podcast. So look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking plug like for Psychosemantic podcast.
Uh-huh. On brand, I like it.
Yeah, I'm trying to be on brand. I hope everyone enjoyed my little Legion bumper that you will hear at the end of this episode.
Yeah, thank you again. That was awesome.
You're welcome. I know people love hearing my voice everywhere. But you see it in movies like Battle Royale. It's still there, where in Battle Royale you have, a country that the kids are going wild, and you have the teacher in that is basically Ishiro Honda saying, you're not gonna fucking behave, I'm gonna make you behave. Yeah. But it's not, you no longer have the respect you should have. Like, I just brought up that bumper I made. I could have easily, being the one that made that bumper, made sure that Kill the Cast was more prominent than any other show in that bumper. Mm-hmm. I could have stated at the beginning, my name is Jerry from Kill the Cast, and if you like this show, blah, blah, blah. I could have done that. I didn't do that because I had the respect for authority and the structure of the network. If I didn't have that, I would have came out there with, I'm Jared from Kill the Cast. If you don't listen to these other podcasts, I might come murder and rape you. Or feed you to mushrooms. I don't fucking know. But I had that. So, Bo, you are 100% right in this being Honda's get off my lawn. It was him going, get your Americanized modern ass out of here and bring back my traditional respect for Japanese culture, my culture. The war ruined their culture in his eyes. Obviously, Japanese culture is still there. It's fucking thriving. It's just, the new generation.
It was just different. It was like Honda was like, I want to reestablish, like with Godzilla and so forth, I want to reestablish some of Japan's cinematic identity. And this is what, part and parcel of what it means to be a Japanese filmmaker, and this is what Japanese cinema is like, and all that stuff. Like, you can't undersell how significant Godzilla is. And by the time, Matango comes along, which is almost a decade later, it's just that the people, like you were saying, the generation that was coming up at this point, and it's one of the reasons that, the Godzilla movies eventually kind of went away for a while, is because they were kind of this goofy kind of vibe that over time that generation grew to find kind of quaint and silly. And you can make the argument that those movies are quaint and silly, but I would also say that's kind of why they're great. But yeah, for, that generation, like it's the people that would eventually become the Sion Sonos of the world. Like, we're going to be artistic and we're going to explore national identity in a way that never has been before. And, this is about the time that there was a change in women's rights as well. And that was starting to pick up some steam and really took, the forefront in politics in the mid-'60s in Japan. And I mean, it was all just really like a turbulent time, like it was kind of everywhere in the world. And and Honda is just a grandpa, and it was like, knock it off, you kids, with your music.
And it's kind of funny because Godzilla is arguably the more important movie in the grander scheme of things, because that's Honda talking to the world about a very important issue. Matango, which I would argue is literally right on. If you're going to talk about Ishiro Honda's films, I don't think anyone's going to disagree that Gojira is his most important film. It's his best movie, blah, blah, blah. But I would argue that Matango is number 2. And the reason it doesn't get seen as such is because it's Honda talking to Japan as where Godzilla's talking to the world. Yeah. And so in that, it's so... Even though you could easily put that to the modern age, even a modern age America, I wish I would have... Damn, throughout this whole thing, I should have been making points of how the people in this act just can be used to show modern day America. I really wish I would have done that. Fuck.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That sounds like a good idea.
That would have been great. Oh, well. But even though this movie was him talking to Japan, it can easily be used to talk to almost every generation, because every generation, as the hands fold over and change, it becomes something different. Like you're talking about Godzilla movies, how they eventually become goofy. Also note that every time Godzilla comes back, it always comes back in a serious movie that talks about the government. Godzilla in 1984, very much a very serious movie, Godzilla versus the government. You look at Godzilla 2000. Once again, Godzilla versus government. It deals with a scientist who is outside of the government network, being the good person, versus the big military man who is not in the net, who is not representing, the normal average person. Even though Godzilla 2000, what the fuck is up with all the transgender jokes? Seriously. What the fuck?
Look, it's pretty rough. Shin Godzilla, though, is back
Shin
on track
Godzilla.
with being very much about Japan kind of reasserting itself militarily in the world. It's a very Shin Godzilla is the Bruckheimer film for Japan, where it's just fuck the rest of the world. Japan will take care of shit.
Yes, but it also shows how Japan, and I think almost any government, in a state of emergency, still has so much red tape to clear.
Yeah.
That it hurts and hinders more than anything else. But at the same time, if you go back to the original courtroom scene in the original Godzilla movie, where you have the lady arguing that this needs to be public, everyone needs to know about it, and the other guy arguing, no, we need to keep it from the public, we need to handle this. That scene could have been redone in Shin Godzilla with the lady going, all this red tape is just holding you up and causing more damage, and the other guy for the government going, yes, but if we don't have these protocols in place, then all of a sudden we're stepping over, the rights of our citizens and blah blah blah. Like, it's a very touchy, messy subject, and Shin Godzilla does a great job of that. But it's something that you see but it eventually just becomes Godzilla Final Wars.
Yeah.
Like, the series always transgresses and goes right back into just entertaining monster v monster movies, something that the Gamera series has almost always just been.
Yeah, Gamera is not going to give you a whole lot of political commentary.
No,
you get
Steven Seagal's daughter, and that's the best you get.
Yeah,
so enjoy it.
If it does it, it's going to be by accident. It's like, oh, we didn't mean to do that. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry if you learned anything in this movie, everyone. We just meant to be a Gamera film.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but I got no problems with. I'm genuinely surprised that there was never an American stab at Gamera.
There's been rumors of it, but nothing ever comes. I kind of wonder now with Godzilla doing so well, if there's not talk somewhere in the background of them trying to get rights to make an American Gamera film.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the name recognition, but I could see it. But the thing that bothers me, getting back to Matango, is how this movie is you cannot find information about this movie. On IMDb, it has 4 pieces of trivia. In the book I have, that is the biography of Ishiro Honda, it gets 2.5 pages. Literally in my book, that's the biography of Eiji Tsuburaya, it gets a paragraph, and that's it. Matango is not talked about, even though it has so much to fucking say. And it breaks my heart. And that's truly why I wanted to do this podcast. I wanted to talk Matango with people that would appreciate it, with people that would understand, and maybe put it out there in a way that would convince other people to hear, whether they hear it and go, oh, it's The Thing meets Gilligan's Island. Hell yeah, I want to watch that. Or if there's like, oh my god, I can't believe this has so much to say. I want to see this movie. And don't get me wrong, the movies from the 60s, it's gonna be a little slow, but it's so well done with atmosphere and character-driven paranoia that you have to see it. Even a couple, 2 months ago, I made a small YouTube video kind of explaining why someone should watch Matango. No one watches that video because no one gives a shit about Matango. Godzilla fans don't give a shit about Matango. Science fiction fans don't give a shit about Matango. Horror fans don't give a shit about Matango. And us three are kind of here to tell you, you need to give a shit about Matango because it's a very important film that you can find so much to talk about. Don't get lost.
Hell, I didn't really check it out until you invited me to do this show, and I'm like, yeah, let's fucking do this. And I am so grateful that I got to see this movie. I absolutely loved it, in case anybody couldn't tell. And I full-heartedly recommend that if nothing else, if you got an Amazon Prime account, just go watch Attack of the Mushroom People and start from there, because you need to see the movie. It is incredible, and I don't think it's slow. It kept my attention the entire time. Yeah. It's like, what, 86 minutes?
All three of us can sit down and watch a Vincent Price movie and be fine, or watch a Korean movies, for fuck's sake, or it's 7 hours long always. But we have that attention span. But for a lot of people that are fans of 80s horror movies and that kind of faster paced slasher movie, it's going to be slow to them. But if you love watching Vincent Price movies, if you sit down and watch Mask of the Red Death for the hell of it, which, by the way, the Cinema Psyops of that episode is absolutely amazing, and you should check it out.
That was all Goro.
Either way, it was a fucking great fucking episode because I absolutely love it. It's in my probably top 5 Vincent Price movies, if not top 2 or 3. Because I'm one of those weird people that would actually put that above Witchfinder General, which is weird. And then House of Wax is my all-time favorite Vincent Price movie. So I guess it's my number 2. But either way,
I actually would put Mask of the Red Death after doing that episode and really doing a deep dive into it. I would put that up towards the top as well.
yes.
It's great. I would put it above Witchfinder General as well after that.
Yeah, I think Witchfinder General, like, it pops in more people's head because of the subject matter. But if you think the guy from Witchfinder General is evil, yeah, he did a lot of torturing and shit because he wants to bang chicks. But fucking Prospero, he makes people fucking dehumanize themselves and act like animals for his entertainment and laughs as a midget burns a fucking guy in a gorilla suit for revenge. You know, hail Satan. Anyway, I can say that I'm a Satanist. I'm allowed to. Fuck all of you. But like, if you find a Vincent Price movie very enjoyable and you can deal with that pacing, you will absolutely love Matango. And don't worry, if you're one of the people that hate reading subtitles, now I'm not talking about the Amazon Prime version, but the dub that comes on the Tokyo Shot disc is very good. And if you need it, hit me up and I will hook you up on the down low. You know what I'm saying? This movie is worth seeing. It is absolutely, there's a reason it's in my top 10 favorite horror movies of all time. It is that fucking good. So with that being said, well, any final word? Does anyone have anything they want to say about Matango that they have left out? I'm going to take that.
I want to watch it again.
Yeah,
I want to watch the version that's on Amazon Prime. I want to see how different it is.
I did give it a quick scan, and it looks solid. So it looks like just a good old-fashioned American dub of Matango. So, yeah, folks, if you...
I'm hoping it's the international dub from Tokyo Shock, because I wouldn't put it past that being popped up there. I've seen other things Tokyo Shock did ending up on Prime, so it's a possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so if you've got Amazon Prime, give it a shot. Matango, if like I said, it's one of those movies that I think I don't know that it's influential, but you will recognize so many other movies in it, which is crazy because they all came after. And as I was saying earlier, it feels like it was the smart kid in class, even if its message might be a little backwards by today's standards. The execution of it and the mood and the atmosphere and that just building sense of bleakness that is so uncommon to movies of this era. In especially in the way that it's presented, it's super good. Oh my goodness, I love Matango so much.
Yeah, so if you don't want to watch Matango after this, I don't know what's wrong with you. I just don't even want to talk to you.
Yeah, you can't help somebody like that, Jerry. You can't help them at this point.
Yeah, they're probably addicted to fucking berry juice.
Probably all hopped up on the Matangos.
Yeah. Can't have it.
It's the only person that don't want to watch Matango is a goddamn Matango.
Because they've already lived it.
Yeah, because they're like Kasai. They like to point out the flaws in others, but can't see the flaws in themselves.
Right. They're like, nah, that's a propaganda movie by anti-Matango activists.
Yeah.
It's not the lifestyle that we actually live. If you want to see what it's like to be a Matango, just eat a mushroom, man. That's all you got to do.
One of us, gooble gobble.
Jimmy, can it? We're trying to keep this on the down low.
Yeah.
By the way, now that you've eaten a mushroom, you can't ever stop.
Which is really messed up.
You just got Matangoed.
So yeah, with that being said, I'm going to turn the floor over to my two gentlemen here so that they can kind of tell you what they do on the internet and where you can find them and all that jazz. So, Cort, the court is yours.
Oh, well done.
I've been wanting to say that forever.
I won't hold you in contempt of court for that joke.
Will you hold me against Cort?
Any court,
perhaps.
no storm?
Yeah.
Are you guys both courting me right now? Huh?
God, I don't like anything
right,
that's happening right now.
No, these puns are so bad. I'm loving them. If you don't hate me after all of that, you can find me on our landing page, legionpodcast.com/cinema-psyops, unless Bo hated the puns that much that I'm now off the network, which is a possibility.
We'll see.
Also, we are anywhere you can find and or get where all fine podcasts are given away for free, whether it's Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play.
Spotify. We're on Spotify.
Spotify now, Tom. Yeah, Spotify now as well. I'm also out there on the Facebooks. If you want to interact with me there, you can private message me or just friend me. I have a Facebook group for the show, Cinema Psyops, where a bunch of like-minded individuals that enjoy all sorts of weird, twisted shit just have a lot of fun and laugh.
Which you go there for the podcast, but let's be honest, you stay for when anyone posts something and it says Psyop News.
Yeah. Yeah, that's accurate.
Yeah, even I'm just like, I just wish I could do an entire episode every week of just Matt and I doing the news. Like, I wish we could have the time to do that, but him and I have been working so crazy that we barely get a regular episode in.
Yeah.
But that would be so much fun because we get that much news now. Everybody plays along. It's like everybody brings their own fucked up weird news story for us.
Oh, it's so good. Oh,
right,
I'm
so-
supposed to talk about me.
Yeah, I was going to move it on to Bo now that Cort is no longer in session.
Nice. All right, now I'm back on board.
Yes. Bo, go ahead.
So the regular show right now is Pick Six Movies, which is, if you've never heard of it, it is a show where, as the title suggests, we take 6 movies built around a common theme, and me and my buddy Chad goof on it for a while. And also tell a little story that is somehow related to the movie. Sometimes it's a production story. Sometimes it's weirdly a story about Mark Twain and Helen Keller, which was inspiring in a weird way. And so anyway, I'm very proud of that show. And you can find that here on legionpodcasts.com, as well as there's pick6movies.com that Chad does. Because I was like, oh, there's no way I'm updating that shit too. And then there's, Hero Go Show is kind of piecemeal, but I'm working on a new episode of that, and there will be a new show, but we don't have, a title for it yet, or, completely the format, or, artwork, or music, or anything.
I hear it's going to be called Go Bow Yourself.
It's going to be called...
The podcast is actually about him using a Bowflex. So.
It's going to be called the New Zoo Review, where we're going to take that format and update it by putting the word new in front of everything. No, it's going to be horror-based, but it's going to have some of the narrative hooks of something like a Pick Six, but we've got kind of a theme, and anyway, it's going to be really cool, and it's going to be a little bit different, and I'm super excited about it. But like I said, I don't know what it's called yet, so I can't promote it.
Sexy. Well, keep your eyes out for the Legion Podcast Network, because that's where you will hear it first. I was going to say see. Well, I guess you would see it too. You'll see the thumbnail.
Yes, there will be things to see with your eyes and listen to with your ears, because that's how science works.
Yeah.
And if you're close enough, taste with your tongue, but only ask first.
Yes, consent is important.
I'll tell you what. There's a co-host on this. You'd have to ask her if the licking was okay. Me, it's carte blanche. You just lick away.
Actually, it is weird. The first time I met Bo, I went to go shake his hand, and he was like, "Oh, you can lick it instead." And I was like, "Lick what?" He's like, "My finger." And I'm like the tip. And he goes, "No, like if I had a ring and you'd kiss it, you just lick it." And I was like, luckily at that point, Ricky Morgan called and said, "Hey, we're actually at the restaurant that's the other one, not the one you're at." And so we all got to fucking get out of there, and whew, talk about cutting it close.
Yeah, Saved by the Bell, really.
Yeah, which is also a very rapey show. So
Zach Morris is trash.
Yeah, so and then of course you're listening to Kill the Cast, so you know about Kill the Cast. But in case you don't listen to some of our other shows, we've got Underwater Kaiju from Outer Space, which is a show that talks all about Godzilla and Gamera and other Japanese science fiction movies that are in the realm of the it's not going to do like all kinds of Japanese horror and sci-fi. We try to ring it in, but every once in a while we might dip our toes into a Hero Ghost Show style of movie. But for the most part, I try to keep it reined in. Though we keep talking about doing the Bloodthirsty trilogy.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I love those movies. So I'm kind of like, who wouldn't want a Japanese Hammer horror movie? It's fucking great.
I think the next one's going to be Quite Anne.
Ooh.
And because it's time to get real.
Oh,
so,
shit.
Yeah.
I'm down. I think I've got the Laserdisc over here if you need me to bring that over. I mean, so...
I'll put it on my Laserdisc player.
I will bring my Laserdisc player.
Which is a box that I just wrote Laserdisc player on the front of.
Oh, no, I have a legit one. I don't even have to flip the disc. The laser flips on its own. I'm fancy.
That is fancy.
And I've got Japanese Godzilla movies on Laserdisc. We can watch Destroy All Monsters in Japanese.
All right.
So yeah, Underwater Country of Outer Space. We also have Jerry Hates Action, where I look at action movies because I don't really like action movies, and I tell you whether I like them or hate them, and it's kind of always up in the air. Like Point Break, I don't see why y'all like that movie, but Terminator 2, I came around on, so you never know. And then, of course, you never know what we're doing here in the future for Kill the Cast. We do have a Horror Coliseum planned coming up. Our next episode is actually going to be the Toxic Avenger, so that'll be fun.
Squee!
Also on that Jerry Loves Action,
Whoa. Loves action. Get the fuck out. Jerry hates action.
Sorry.
People in your American Ninja movies.
I like to be optimistic. You ought to try those Denzel Washington Equalizer movies.
Okay, we'll put it on there.
They're quite good.
We'll see. We will see about that. I
second that.
Wow. Okay. Well, if the court approves, then we'll see what's going on.
Yeah.
If it pleases
the court
court
seal of approval.
Yeah.
The Denzel Washington Equalizer movies are basically Denzel Washington being the Punisher, and they are brilliant.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty good. Yeah, not since Man on Fire has Denzel Washington been so brazenly awesome.
Well, I will definitely have to be checking those out. So yes, thank you everyone for joining us. Also, we are on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. Check out YouTube. I've been putting out a video almost every week, depending on health, because sometimes I just don't have the health, or I worked and didn't have to do it. Like I didn't make a video this week, but I made one last week, so I'll probably make one this coming week. So that's always good times. So check out the YouTube in case podcast is just not enough, and you're like, Jerry, I want to hear you do more. Look on there. I either talk about old horror movie video games you probably didn't know exist unless you're in England, or I talk about shit like Matango, or just random movie facts that I threw together from searching IMDb. So, I'm cool like that. But whatever, thank you for joining us. Check out all the other podcasts on Legion Network, which are about to get named in this bumper that's about to drop. And thank you, Bo. Thank you, Cort, for coming on.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
And doing Matango with me, making my dreams come true. I'm very excited about it. So yes, check out Kill the Cast. Check out the Cinema Psyops, where, what is it? Movies leave scars, but so does having sex with Cort. Is that what it is?
Well, while that is also true, it is actually physical wounds heal, but cinematic ones don't.
Gotcha. So technically, if you have sex with someone and it's recorded, it hits both those spectrums.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
My sex tapes leave scars in all directions.
Yeah, so go check out that show. Like I said, check out the Mask of the Red Death episode. It was fucking fantastic. And then, of course, check out Bo and Pick Six Movies. They just did Magic Mike. I haven't listened to it yet, but I'm pretty sure that that's going to be the most stand-up, heroic, heterosexual podcast I've ever heard.
We definitely use the word cock a lot.
Yeah, and check out Here Hero Go Show, which is one of my personal fucking favorites. Suicide Club episode is fantastic. I absolutely love that movie. I got to cover it on the ABCs of Hidden Horror, where I gave my interpretation of it. But check out Bo's, because it's very fucking insightful. And there's also, you can look up the Meatball Machine. Fucking goddamn it.
And Kodoku Meatball Machine. We did Meatball Machines.
Yeah, we did both of them. Me and Bo got together and did them. And they're fantastic. So, yeah, we're out of here. At these end of these fucking podcasts, I really need to make a script because I always just kind of blabber the fuck on. But we're out. We're done. Thank you. Good night. Good morning, Vietnam. All of that jazz. Fucking watch your berry juice. And eat your mushrooms, kids.
If you enjoyed this show, then make sure you check out the other great shows on the Legion Podcast Network, like Cinema Psyops, Cinema Beef, Devour the Podcast, Duncan and Bo Come Correct, Exploding Heads Horror Movie Podcast, Friday the 13th, Get Slayed, The Helming Power Hour, Hello, This is the Doom Show, Hero Hero Go Show, Kill the Cast, Underwater Kaiju from Outer Space, Jerry Hates Action, Legion After Dark, Mental Health, Obsessive Cinema, Discourse, Pick Six Movies, the podcast by The Cemetery, the podcast on Haunted Hill, the Psychosemantic Podcast, Rick Radio, House of Wax, Dude Looks Like the 80s, Rabbit and Red Radio, the Shadecast, Short Bus Cinema, Two Drink Minimum Commentaries, the VD Clinic, Who Will Survive Horror Podcast, and Witch vs. the Doomsday Clock. With such a wide spread of shows, there is guaranteed to be a niche for you to fall in love with. Horror, politics, movies, books, sex, music, commentaries, health, video games, kaiju, action, news, comedy, and opinions that would most likely get you killed in some parts of the world. We are proud to bring you some of the best podcasting in the world. Check us out at www.legionpodcast.com, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and any other dark corner of the internet where podcasts can be found.